I've been researching it now for 3 years, and it's the best.
I'm gonna try to figure out where to put this microphone so I don't sound like I'm too loud or too soft here. Welcome. It's good to see everybody. Before we start this morning, I want to take a moment to really reflect on people, relationships, and what it means to come together as a community. And if anyone's done that, this town that we're in, this city that we're in has done that. And the people around these communities have done that. I want to take a moment this morning to thank Lewiston for their hospitality, thank the Green Label. It's going to be emotional for me. Like many, my family was impacted by the shooting 3 weeks ago. But more importantly, we lost a dear member of our family, our business office family here in Boston, with Lucille Violet and her husband Bob. My sincere, heartfelt thoughts are with all of you. I don't know how to say it anymore. I don't know how to express my feelings to each and every one of you in the business office in Lewiston. But I want to take a moment of reflection this morning in silence to really reflect on what Lucille and Bob meant. She dedicated her whole entire life to the Lewiston School Department, and more specifically the business office. And beyond that, for all of those who are affected, have lost and are suffering today. So please take a moment of silence and reflection before we start today. Thank you very much. Please know our hearts are with you, not just yesterday, today, and tomorrow, but they're with you every day and with your entire family in Lewiston. Thank you. On another note, we're going to have someone in this room who is going to be retiring after many years of service. And I want Terry to come up. Yes. For those of you who don't know this individual, Terry Government's my next door neighbor down in southern Maine. Terry Government's been the business manager in Bedford. I can't even count how many years. Do you want to count?
No. Not particularly.
Terry is retiring at the end of December. I want to take a moment just to thank you for your service, acknowledge you. We will be acknowledging you in a more formal way with ASPO. But for this morning, I want to just say thank you for your service. And all that you've done, all of the mentoring, all of the sharing, and all of the communication you've done for all business managers, but just personally for me as well, for what you've done for the Southern Maine area. So thank you. Before we do introductions, I want to thank our vendors. You're probably noticing we're doing something a little different. If you were in Augusta, you'll continue to see it as we have meetings. We're trying to engage our vendors more. I want to thank Andrew Scott and Bang for being the vendor spotlight for today. I also want to thank Competitive Energy for being here and having a table here today. The goal of our vendor relationships is really to build relationships and connections with vendors. We're offering vendors opportunities to have a table at our meetings, for you to be able to interact with them, to to be able to share with them, ask them questions. I believe they probably brought swag with them today as well. But it's more about building relationships. And the goal here is not to hard sell, it's about to learn, gain information, and build those relationships. So thank you, Interstock and Maine, for sponsoring today. I appreciate Christine and Lena being here. Thank you, Competitive Energy, for being here. Go up and share some information with them, ask them what they do, and learn something today. And that's what we're trying to do here every day when we have our vendors. I'm going to start with introductions. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Colin Walsh. I'm from RSU 57, which is the towns of Alfred, Lyman, Limerick, Newfield, Shapley, and Waterbury in southern Maine. And I'm going to start on this end, and we'll just go around the room and just stand up and introduce yourself for a second.
Sure. Andrew here, Warren School Department Assistant. Brian Jones, Prescription Department. Alex Webster, Specialized Purchasing Consultant.
Michelle Grant, RSU 12, Business Manager. Katie Gannon, Business Manager, Community Education. Kate Bolton, Scarborough, Business Manager. I'm Leslie Wysocki, on the Brunswick School Department.
Gabrielle Cole, MSA 52 Business Manager.
Companion, I'm the Manager for Advocacy. Anna Joyce Temple, Accountant for NCS. Catherine Martha, Lisa Health. Peggy C, I'm Lucian, and I'm the director.
Jackie Smith, Senior County, Joseph
Hanson, controller.
Sherry Moody, Business Manager, Midcoast School of Technology.
Sue Fuller, MS 1851, Payroll Benefits and Staff Account. Carolyn Miller, Business Manager, Oklahoma.
Lucy Tabert, Valley Unified Education Service Center, serving Madawaska, Fort Canton, French Quarter.
Karen Levin, Business Manager. Sue Fuller, Business Manager,
I'm actually a new business manager.
Tyler Banks, and I'm with Barry Jackson. Mark Bouchard, 39, representing Caribou and Stockholm.
Shelley Cummings, Business Manager, Knoxville Technical School.
Dr. McGowan, I'm with the Aussie team at Maine DOE. Holly O'Neill, I'm the Assistant Fiscal Coordinator for the Aussie team at Maine. I am Good morning, everyone. My name is Shelley Shasta General. I am Director of the Office of Federal Emergency Relief Programs at the Maine Department of Education.
Holly Eccleston, SAP 59, Madison.
Carol Cantos, RSU 74.
Dean Flanagan, Director of
Cooler, I'm the business manager for MS 86, Buxton Hollis, Wilmington, State. I'm Debbie Markey, business manager at St.
Jody Harmon, RSU 9, assistant director.
Jennifer Cooler, where am I now? MS 58 business manager. I see you all in the past lives.
Did you get it, Jen? Thank you all. It's great to see such a large turnout. We had a great turnout in Augusta as well. There's a lot of hard work that goes on behind the scenes. I just want to introduce quickly the board so that you know who the board of directors is. Maine a couple of years ago became a legitimate 501c3 nonprofit organization with a board, with new bylaws, and became a just very formal organization. So it's important for you as the members to know who your board is. If you could stand up and stay standing when I announce your name. Don Pooler is secretary. Kelly Wentworth, Diane Boucher, Sherry Moody, Sherry Proctor's not here today, and Andrea Dish, I don't believe is here yet. So that is your board of directors. Thank you very much for your service. As we look to the annual meeting in the spring, if you have any interest in serving on the board, please communicate that with Joanne. I want to take a moment this morning and give another thank you to Joanne. Joanne has moved our organization since July 1st in a direction that the board was really hoping to move in. I have to be honest, I didn't expect it to move as quickly, but I should have known better when we hired Joanne. Joanne, can you stand up a second? Yes. Joanne has been with us since July 1st, and hopefully you, day in and day out, are seeing a different organization than you saw a year ago. And hopefully that's the beginning steps of the organization and its progression forward. I want to thank you, Joanne, because we've had discussions for several years about moving the organization in a different direction. And it's under your leadership that we've been able to actually start and move that process. So I just want to say thank you, Joanne, and we could give her a round of applause. On that same note, I've said it, I will continue to say it as long as I'm president. This is your organization. It is not the board that just stood up. We're just representatives. Communicate with Joanne about what it is that you want, need from us as a board and from Joanne. Whether that is training, PD, legislative, or anything else. What is it that you as a business manager or your business offices need from us as an organization? One of the primary focuses we started with was increased communication and increased PD. And hopefully we've really started that at the beginning of this year with our meeting in Augusta, our meeting today, and the Drummond session we had a week ago. Hopefully you are seeing more communication, more information, and as the legislative session begins, hopefully, you'll see more of that as well. Please share. Please tell us what we're doing well at, and tell us the things we aren't doing well at, and the things that you need as business managers, and more importantly, as business officers. We are really trying to encourage folks that this isn't just an organization of business managers. It's an organization of business officers. I would strongly urge small, medium, large-sized districts to really consider a district membership. We're going to be starting some Zoom PDs over the winter months and trying to get those in maybe hour and a half increments on very specific topics. Send us ideas of what you think would do well in a Zoom for an hour or an hour and a half. It's really important because otherwise you're leaving it to me and Joanne, and I'm not sure you really want to do that. So let us know, communicate with us. The other goal we had was to have our committees really be active, and I think you're going to hear in a very short time how active TD, legislative, and Tri-State is and is continuing to be. And that's because of your participation of the members who serve on those committees, really spending their time and sharing that information out. So I'd like to challenge you today to one last thing before I turn it over to committee reports. I would like every one of you heard from SPC, RHR, Androscoggin, Competitive Energy. Vendors are very important. Send one name today before you leave. I know everyone has a phone and a laptop out. Send an email to Joanne with a name of one vendor that you think would be a good relationship with Maine ASBO. It would benefit the vendor and would benefit us as members of Maine ASBO. If everyone did that, we have about 75 participants today. That would be extremely helpful for building what Joanne is trying to do, is reinvigorate those vendor relationships. Just one name. Could send more, but if everyone in this room sent one, that would be extremely helpful to us. As the agenda goes on today, I want to thank DOE. They have been and continue to be a very important partner with us. And I say partner, and I use that term for people who go to Tri-State all the time. We sit at dinners, we sit at lunches, we talk to other states, we go around to International ASBO and talk about what California is doing or what Texas is doing. Bless you. I would say that by far, we have one of the best relationships in the country with the Department of Education. I want to thank the DOE for that and every department of the DOE. They are here and they're sharing their time and expertise, and it really has been a good partnership that has developed over the years. Started with Joanne, started with Tyler, but it has continued in the other departments that are represented here today as well. I have not once not had the cell phone number of every leader, including Shelley, to say, here's my phone number. You ever need anything, you call me. You ever have problems, you call me. Don't hesitate to call if your membership needs something and has problems or concerns. Share them. I will tell you that is not the way in 95% of the states in our country. So I do want to say thank you for that. Let's see how far off time I am already. That's my report. Are there any questions or comments or thoughts before I get into minutes and treasurer report and committee reports? Don't be shy. Please communicate with Joanne, communicate with myself. Please share outside of this meeting what your needs are and how we can best serve you. I'd look for a motion to approve the minutes of the October 13th business meeting that was held in Augusta. Is there a motion? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? The minutes are approved. The treasurer's report went out in your packet. Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Thank you. So there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion about the treasurer's report? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? The treasurer's report is approved. Going into committee reports, we're going to start out with legislative. Stacy? You can't wonder what I do.
Good morning. Usually we bring to you bills that are pending that maybe we want to address our representatives about. This morning I want to talk about a bill that's already passed that might not be too late for us to do something about because it's going to affect every one of us, not just on our district level, but on our own individual pocketbook levels. There's a new payroll tax starting January 1st, 2025. It's going to be a 1% tax on wages. The rate can change at any time, and we won't have any say in the matter. It is to cover leave beginning May 2026, and so the collection will be almost a year and a half. Thank you, Joanne, she sent me a lot of information about this, and the state estimates they'll have about $25 million by the time May 2026 comes. There'll be a 5% withdrawal from this fund to pay for an administrator. And just like Medicare and Social Security, there is an employer match. So I know 1% doesn't sound like very much, but for my employer, and I'm kind of a smaller employer, it's almost $185,000. I'm very lucky to have all my collective bargaining agreements in place, so I already have my salaries figured for FY25, and that's why I know how much that number is. Joanne is going to compile a list of all our districts and how much money that means to all of us. So if you could please get that number to her when you have your budget ready, that would be great. This wasn't a standalone bill. It was buried in 383 pages of the biennial budget. Joanne also sent me that information. But what happens next is the Department of Labor is going to make rulemaking around this. So there's time for us to do something about it. What this does is it expands the Maine Family Medical Leave Act, and it has leave in there that the federal Family Medical Leave Act does not have. So a person could qualify for the state leave and then still be entitled to 12 weeks under family medical leave from your district. Seems to just keep paying people not to work. One of the provisions in this is you could have a really close best friend that you consider family, and you would be able to access this leave for that. So I have already put an ad in a paper in Hawaii for a best friend. That's how crazy this is. So I've talked to my representative. I've sent a letter to the paper. I've talked to my coworkers during lunch, and everybody is quite enraged about this. So I'm asking you, in addition to sending your numbers to Joanna, to also contact your representatives, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors. This affects every working Mainer. It's not just schools. And it was kind of put in place for employers that don't offer paid leave. And I'm not against paid leave, but I don't think we, as individuals, should pay for this leave. Maybe the employers that don't offer the paid leave should have to pay for it. So if you want to email me or talk to me during break, I'm really passionate about this. I love to talk to anybody about it. They always say if you want to hurt somebody, get them in the pocketbook. Well, this is our pocketbook, so let's hurt back. Thanks.
As the other committee members, there are actually three of them, but I don't see the third one here. And it's been great to have Joanna come on. When I first signed up for the committee, it was a committee of one. We didn't have Joanna. And to try to read all the bills that come out, even for someone that's paid to do it, is very challenging. There was over 1,000 bills last session, and there are, I believe, 58 or so this session that are under consideration. So we're working together with Joanna to get information ahead of time, because by the time we kind of meet and get through and MSMA comes and tells us about the bills, a lot of times they're already at a point where we really have little impact. So our goal is to get out in front and be able to tell you folks about things that may impact us in the business sense, and have that in time for the work sessions for bills, so that if you feel like you need to write or reach out or contact your person in the legislature, just hear back from them, like what's their take on the bill. One thing learned during the process is when a bill is proposed, like let's say around DOE transportation and using activity buses, the legislature does not call the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, and they don't call the DOE, and they don't do any of that to see what the bill will do in the end. They just propose a bill and let it work its way through, and then there's this rulemaking process after the fact. So the only way to kind of gather that information ahead of time is for like us people to look at how is it going to affect our districts, and maybe make those calls and letters to the legislators. We, as the ASBO, cannot write, it's my understanding, for or against, because we're a non-political entity, but we can write a letter that is neither for or against, but just kind of lays out the facts as we see them. Like, how will this affect us? $185,000 in our district is probably 2 positions, right? That's 2 staff members that you're going to have to essentially ask the taxpayers to fund the next year that you didn't really have a budget for. So you're going to have to build that in. That's all I have to say, and please reach out to any of us if you have thoughts or concerns. Joanna puts a nice list together of bills that are in process, etc. Yes?
Can I ask a question? We just went to the Drummond Woodsum conference, and they said that it was going to be 1% split between the employer and the employee. Is that not correct?
That is correct. But again, it could be 5% in 2 years. So then it's 2.5. So I'm just calling it 1%.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and that is, of course, from Drummond Woodsum, that's kind of a guess. Like, because it still has to go to the Department of Labor and other departments until they finally make those rules, which will come out in a few months.
It's still a new payroll tax, and that's what,
Right.
to pay for things, we already have leave from our employers, right? So why should we pay for an employer that doesn't offer paid leave? They should pay for that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Zach. Just a couple things on legislative to follow up with that. Much like many years ago when school districts were to absorb part of the living state retirement pension costs, this is no different. I mean, we have a tradition with Medicare and Social Security that spend those percentages forever. There's an unknown with this. It's starting at 1% as it's proposed now, split between employer and employee. But what are the odds of whether that amount of funding is going to be enough to fund all of these leaves? It's got to be a self-sufficient fund. So if all of these leaves become more than what is being projected, then guess what's going to happen to the percentage? It's going to go up. And right now it's split 50-50. Well, what happens if it goes to 2% or 3%? And our employer share is 1% or 1.5% or 2% on top of Medicare. Where does that leave you in your particular budgets? On top of that, I would say the cost that we're not considering is those folks who are leaving, just like with earned paid leave, who's filling or backfilling that position when that employee is out. Now, in some cases, maybe you don't need to backfill it. In other cases, you have to or are required to by law to backfill it. So what happens with that cost? Well, that's going to be borne by us as districts. Those are the facts of what this law is proposing. I think we just need to be cautious of that. There are a lot of labor laws right now that got tabled in the last session. One was to increase an hourly rate for our school district employees, which was significant, including educational technicians. So I think we just, as an organization, we're a 501c3, which means, as you folks said, we cannot, as an organization, do lobbying. What we can do is provide our members information. Joanne obviously has a deep background in legislative policy making, as well as how to write letters and whom to write them to. That is one of the key ingredients of what Joanne can provide to all of us. And then we can write those letters in our individual capacities as business managers, I cannot, and Joanne cannot, and the board cannot write them on behalf of all of you as Maine ASBO. Does that make sense to everybody? I just want to be clear as to what we as an organization can do or not do, but what we as individual members and school business managers or assistant superintendents or business office folks or citizens can do on behalf of these bills. Are there questions around that? Because I want to be very clear about that, because that's a very important part of how we can still be actively involved in these legislative matters.
So I was planning to go home and write some letters, but should I not write them as a member of MASBO, or I should write the letter as an individual citizen? Is that correct?
The question was, she serves on the board, can she write that as a representative of ASBO? No, you cannot. What you can say is that you are a business director, finance director, whatever your title is, on behalf of schools in the state of Maine, in your particular school, that you're concerned about this bill for these reasons. Am I off base at all? Is that? Okay.
And I'm happy to look at it. If, you want another set of eyes on a letter, I'm happy to look at that. Sometimes I might have a little inside baseball or some buzzwords that might help or something like that.
So we just as an organization have to be very clear about what our role is, because when we incorporated as a 501c3, we did that very purposefully with the advice of Drummond when we incorporated. So there are things we can still do to be effective. We just as an organization, as a board, and as an executive director cannot legislate and lobby and spend money on that on all of your behalfs, but as a collective we can do it individually.
I have a tip. So we talked about this in committee yesterday. When you're writing a letter or you're testifying, whatever you're doing, put in facts, real facts. Stacy talked about the dollar amount to her district. That's important. That gets attention of legislators. So, don't just say this is a pain in the patootie, make it real. Boots on the ground, real. It's going to cost money. I'm going to have to add staff, which is going to cost money to my taxpayers. Taxpayers is a good buzzword. So just think about those things. Not general, but super specific.
You can continue to go ahead.
Great. Where to go?
It's all yours.
This your phone?
Yeah, it is. You can answer those.
I got it.
The red one is emails from work, so if you can answer those while you're
Yes, and I'd like to thank those of you who've already emailed me this morning at Colin's direction. I'm going to do the Professional Development Committee report. So we have a lot going on in that committee as well. I want to thank everyone who's responded to the survey. We've got some great information where over 30% of respondents, which may not seem like a lot, but considering that Meckery told me once that most surveys get like 10%, we're doing pretty darn good. So I'd like to encourage you to respond to that if you haven't had time. If you need the link again, let me know. Happy to help you. That is going to be very informative to the committee when planning out webinars and professional development for these meetings. So thank you so much. Our next meeting in person won't be until March 1st. We will be at Sherry Moody's School in the Osprey Nest in Rockland. Looking forward to that spot. And in the morning, R.H.R. Smith will talk to us about how to prepare for your audit. And then in the afternoon, DOE, Ida Batista, will talk to us about our favorite thing, account coding. So that should be a great meeting. I'll get those agendas out in February sometime. Seems like a long time away, but it really isn't. In April 26th, as Colin mentioned, that'll be our annual meeting. We'll be in Bangor at United Technology Center. That meeting, because of the UTC schedule, will start a little bit later, so we'll give folks a little bit extra time to get to Bangor. I'm already thinking to next year, so I'm loving going to the CTE schools, any school site that wants to, doesn't have to be a CTE school, we can figure out catering. Anybody that would like to have one of these meetings at their school, reach out to me. We need to make a trip to Southern Maine next year. I'm trying to hit all the regions, so that means Lucy eventually will be coming to Aroostook. So you don't have to travel anymore. So yeah, so I'm trying to hit all those. So let me know if anyone wants to host a meeting. Obviously, we'll keep one meeting in Augusta every year. Good central location and easier for our DOE partners. Let's see, what else do we have? Our next committee meeting for professional development is December, mid-December. And we'll be talking to my counterpart in New Hampshire, Chuck Bates, about how they organize and utilize their regional sites. So look for some more information after we have a conversation with Chuck about what we might do for professional development and supporting regional groups so that everyone can talk to each other in their own region about what's happening, what's going on, those sorts of things. So look for some new information about that coming soon. Newsletter will be out next week before the holiday. And I think that's it for now. Questions, concerns, thoughts? You know my email apparently. So. No.
This is how our telephone conversations go.
So, as part of the survey, again, great ideas for professional development. I'm going to be working with the committee to set up some 1-hour webinars through the winter months so that no one has to travel. And hoping to get one in December, one in January, one in February for this year. Wondering if there's an interest in doing anything across the summer. I'm thinking maybe, maybe not, just because I know you've got a lot of deadlines in the summer, don't you? But something that we can ponder in committee and with some feedback. But yes, those will be coming based on the topics that you guys are giving us in the survey. Some great ideas. I talked to Lena a little bit. I think they've got something up their sleeve that we might be able to do. And DOE will definitely be on my list for some things, and there'll be targeted topics. So one thing will be the CTE funding formula. I'm going to ask Ida if she and I can maybe do something around that. While that's not germane to everybody, it's certainly germane to those members with regions or centers that they're trying to manage. So I think that would be a good topic if we can work it out. So we'll chat about that. Surprise, Ida. So did I get it? Yeah. All right. Next on the agenda.
We'll have Diane come out and do tri-state. In between time, you took out my papers, so thank you. If you could finish this. I don't know. I'm old, I can't remember stuff. Seriously though, reach out. Hi Diane. We really want to make PD a priority and really address the things that you folks need. So I know I've repeated it, but we can only do what you feel. Do you feel the day-long sessions, just by a raise of hands, are the day-long sessions that we're doing like last month and this month better than a half-day session? Yes? No, you'd rather go back to half-days? Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Dean?
All right, clearly you can see I'm not Diane. Very, very lucky. Tri-State, May 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, 3 days. It's a great opportunity for networking and professional development. But you know, enough about that. Let's get down to the real event, and that is a lobster bake, which we're in the process of planning. So don't want to miss that. We're also going to have some other activities outside of the actual conference center. And I should say that this year is in Portland. So if you can travel to Portland, we'd love to have you there. So it's nice to see, and that's usually a well-attended conference as well. Lots to do, and like I said, we're at the Lobster Bake, and we're also disclosed this. We're looking at the possibility. The Sea Dogs are actually having a homestand that week. Thank you, Adam. So whatever influence you had on that, we very much are looking at local activities, and like I said, it's in addition a great PD opportunity, an opportunity to network, also with folks from New Hampshire and Vermont. So, thank you.
I can't encourage you enough to set aside time for Tri-State. You will find, just like today, hopefully you will leave and say it was well worth my time. That's our expectation when you attend these. I have never left Tri-State and said that I wish I hadn't gone. I'm very thankful every time I go, because what I learn there and the connections I make and the sharing of information is just critical to our learning and development in our careers. So, any questions before we go on to the next item? Concerns, questions, or comments are certainly welcome. You guys are awake, right? Bless you. So everybody is happy this morning. I'm going to introduce Lena Ham, Christine Bishop from Androscoggin Bank. Androscoggin has been a long-term partner with Lena as well. They are the sponsor for today's event. While they're making their way up, I do want to thank the staff and the students of Lewiston and the Green Ladle. It is a spectacular site. It is difficult to get into, and we truly appreciate being here and all that they do. So hopefully you will enjoy your day here. Christine? Amen.
Good morning. It's nice to be here. Androscoggin Bank is, our headquarters are right in downtown Lewiston, a stone's throw away from Oak Street and the city's office. This is not going to be a commercial about us today at all, but we were all incredibly, I have a hard time even speaking about it myself still, about the recent events in downtown. We all knew somebody. So it is incredibly, we were very pleased when we were offered the opportunity to be here today, and that was over a month ago. And right now it's even more, appropriate. We are going to try and do the presentation there, but if not, we've been known to wing it before and we'll do it again. I want to introduce you to talk about our staff. John Stemko, who is the Director of Government Banking, and most of you know him as our municipal lender. Back last spring, he took over double duty on the deposit and loan side. He can't be here today because he hasn't really had a vacation since last April, when we sort of suggested he take the week off. Occasionally he's been known to listen to me. My name is Lena Han. I've been with the bank for 17 years, 15 working in the business of government, most of that with the government. We also have Christine, can we just take a quick second to Christine Bishop is my counterpart. She's been with us about a month. For any of us who've had staffing issues, sometimes you gotta wait for the right fit. And I gotta tell you, this girl is completely the right fit. I am so glad that she's on board and she's going to be working on the deposit cash management side as I do. We also have Katie Fox, who works with John on the lending side. If any of you have had a lease or a bond or any kind of loan with John, Katie's touched it, she's dealt with you, and she can't be here today as well. So we're going to move on, and today we're going to talk about a topic that is hopefully you've all given some thought to, and it's on the subject of fraud. Christine?
Yeah, so this kind of is a powerful slide. As we all know, the threat of fraud is real, and the question is, are we all ready? I'm sure everyone in this room has been touched at one point in time from fraud. Raise your hand if you have had it or known somebody that has had it. Probably every single one of us. And also as a business, government business as well, there's some key things that you can do to help protect yourself. We are here to help answer any questions, give you guidance, and kind of coach you along the way to make sure that you have the right safeguards in place to protect you against fraud. This slide was pretty powerful. I found this from the AFP, which is the Association for Financial Professionals. They do a survey every year, and they really come up with some key points that really look at fraud. And overall, fraud has actually dropped a little bit. If you see the overall attempted or actual payments has decreased since 2022. Now don't get excited, because COVID hit, everybody had to flex and figure out how to make payments electronically. So as you can imagine, electronic payments fraud is up a little bit because of that. But it's a little bit more protected and harder to commit than your actual paper check. So paper checks continue to be the most vulnerable. And the fraudsters have actually gone a little bit back in time. They are taking, they're duplicating the keys to those nice blue boxes out there. With a decrease in employees, less people to watch them. So the fraud for actually stealing those bundles of checks that you mail in one of those blue boxes has increased. They're going back to washing checks. So they've kind of taken, the strategic and the more complicated way, and they're still capturing your checks. So checks are the most vulnerable payment method that you could be using right now. How many people still write checks? So we still all do it. I still stick mine in the mailbox like everybody else. So anything that we can do to help kind of give you some items and guidance around protecting yourself, we're here for. Business email compromise. It's probably the highest reason companies have fraud. I think right up there it tells you that 71% of companies were victims of payment fraud via email. How many of you have gotten that email and you kind of think twice, do I click on that link or don't I? Don't ever click on the link, always do your due diligence before you click on that link. And that's personal and business. Funny story is, a while ago, a couple years ago I think it was, I got an email from GameStop. I'm like, what did my husband order? So I take a snapshot, send it to him, I'm like, what'd you order? You don't play games. I come to find out that somebody had stolen my information, ordered one of those expensive Nintendos. It actually showed up on my doorstep, and their scheme was to call me and send me an email that they had shipped it to me, by accident, and can I ship it back to them? Well, flag went up, I checked my financial institution, I checked with the police, and come to find out that was a common scam that year. So of course I deleted everything, canceled my credit card, got it funded back to me, but they become very agile to what we will be susceptible out there. So just be careful when you're looking at that. Checks, so the big thing for us is nearly 80% organizations go to their financial institution first for help. The second spot is, of course, the police. But being that we're a financial institution, I'm sure everybody's involved in a financial institution. They're there to help, and we're here to help. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Lena. She's going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing here in the landscape.
If anybody who has ever dealt with me has ever called me and I haven't gotten back to you or whatever's going on, when I get a call saying that there's fraud, everything else stops. And I jump on that. We have a whole department that works on that. It's huge. And I just want to talk about some of the things that I see when she talked about checks. Yeah, the bad guys are really, it's amazing what they're good, how they're great at. Photocopiers are great these days. Does a really good job of copying checks, but they're still copying somebody's signature. They are, I have found, at the bank that we spend a lot of time chasing something like that. Payroll changes. Whenever we do an account review with somebody, we always talk about best practices. And I still find that sometimes people forget. I found, it happens, that people will take an email from somebody and say, hey, can you change my direct deposit? And sometimes it still happens and they'll do it, and fraud will be caught. When it comes to the check altering though, I gotta say, one of the things that you need to know is that when it comes to the checks, every time you send out a check, you're giving the fraudster information to steal from you. And if that fraudster is incorporated, he can then take that information from your check and turn it into an ACH and pull it from you. So when I talk to clients about positive pay, ACH, it always goes hand in hand. So there's actually a website out there where fraudsters can pay really bad money to bad guys that will teach them and tell them how to steal all your money. Email compromise for sure. They're getting really, really good at just completely copying the heck out of your email. Or we've had a case with the president of our bank, he's Neil, N-E-I-L. We all got an email from N-I-E-L, little things like that. And wire fraud is incredibly expensive. We hope that you talk to your bank about what they're doing to protect your funds. Sometimes when somebody needs to send out a wire or something, we've got to do a callback and it's an annoyance. But once the wire's gone, it's gone. So these are some of the things that I see, at the bank. But by far the checks are the worst. So pass this back to Christine.
Yes, so how can you protect against fraud, and how can we help you, your financial institution help you? A few best practices out there, education. Educate your employees. Make sure they know not to click on that link. Make sure they stop. Everybody's in a rush nowadays, so we want to kind of get things off our plate. Just make sure they take a step back. Look at, hover over links, make sure it's actually what they should be clicking on. Implement your own policies and procedures internally. You should all have kind of processes and procedures around fraud. Implement callback verifications. Pretty simple. Dual control is an easy one as well. Daily and monthly account reconciliation. The better you reconcile, the more you're going to know. So don't let those statements pile up in a corner. Make sure that you try and reconcile them at a minimum on a monthly basis. Migrate your payments from checks to digital. Checks are still the most vulnerable, so the more you go digital, the better off you'll be. Adopt adopt multi-factor authentication and soft tokens. I'm sure if you have online banking, everybody has a soft token that you have to use. So one more step to make sure that you can't get, that they can't hack. Validate payment beneficiary information. And of course, I'm sure if you're clients of us or if you're clients of other financial institutions, they have preached positive pay and ACH debit filter technologies. That is one of the best ways in at a very low cost that you can protect your finances in there. The next two slides are really just kind of fraud protection, positive pay. If you don't know about it, please talk to us, talk to your bank. We're more than happy to go through how you can implement positive pay. And then ACH, filter and block. We can also kind of talk with you about that as well. Two very simple solutions that will help protect you. And other than that, we wanted to leave it. Does anybody have any questions?
I will tell you that I have some information back there on the subject of email compromise checks. I have information back there on email compromise checks, ransomware. You know, so it's just, you know, information I got back there. Feel free to reach back. But again, if anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to answer, and then we're back there in case for later. All right, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Lena. So if that left you with ideas for a potential Zoom topic, let us know. We're going to take a break till 10:15, so Gio can set up and get ready for the presentation. So grab yourself. I see they still got breakfast out there. There's coffee and juice, and we'll see you in 15 minutes. We're going to start the next session, folks. I will say it's great to see, after so many years, everyone coming out and networking together, being able to socialize, share information, and really exciting times to really see the interaction of what live meetings really can present. Apparently I can't stand there, or anywhere. The microphone is saying, get off the stage, do my job, and give it to someone else, which is exactly what I'm going to do. Just quickly, someone mentioned to me about the state of Maine notice that went out on the fraud, especially through the Department of Ed, as being 10 to 30% of the total. For those of you who did not see that email from DOE, please look at your emails. I believe it went out to just about everyone. There is an 800 number. There's a lot of detail there about you being able to share that with your staffs as well. Yes?
I got the letter from him yesterday saying that I was paid with all that information too. So actually,
So the comment was, I also received a hard copy letter in the mail indicating that I was someone who was compromised. I have not physically got that. I know that I was compromised. I'm blaming Adam for it, but this is how Adam and I work. We go to things. Adam doesn't show up to a meeting and I volunteer him for something. In the meeting, I don't go, he volunteers me, so this is payback. So if you haven't dig in, I know it's gone to superintendents. I know I got it as a business manager, and I know IT directors got it. I know schools and superintendents are going through right now and determining our schools, and it's a school-by-school decision. Are the school districts sending it out to all of their staff or not? Some school districts are choosing to, others are not. That is a superintendent decision, and each school's going to handle that differently. Without further ado, I guess I'll wind up. Was there an order to this? Was there?
If there is, I want to come back here.
So this next session is going to be about federal and various grants and the things we need to know and the things we need to share. So, Shelley and your team.
Good morning, everyone. I am Maisha Aksha. I work in the Office of Federal Emergency Relief Program team, and I'm the fiscal coordinator. Many of you knew my name, so I work in the reimbursement side of the business. So to make sure all invoices are reviewed properly and the payment is made properly.
Good morning again, everyone. My name is Shelley, and I'm the Director of the Office of Federal Emergency Relief Programs. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tyra Corson. I'm the ESEA Management Analyst, and I am being instructed to step forward. I have rejoined the DOE a little over a year ago, but I did work in this position from 2015 to 2018. Good morning-ish. I'm Barbara McGowan. I'm the Director of Financial Management. Can they not hear me? It's me. For the Office of Special Services and Inclusive Education, birth to age 22, which means I also oversee CPS.
Good morning again. I am Colleen O'Neill. I am the Assistant Fiscal Coordinator for the Office of Special Services and Inclusive Education. I deal mostly with IDEA applications, year-end reports. I assist on the invoicing side with the rest of our fiscal team.
As you can see, we work very well together as a collective group. We have to get our chuckles in because, as you can imagine, all of us work in compliance-based components. And to be able to come to work and enjoy our jobs, we have to be sure that we have these relationships because that's what brings the energy and the positivity to the work that we do. So our goal today, as many different offices within the Department of Education, is just to come together and talk to you folks about some of the commonalities. But our greater goal is to continue that relationship and that partnership that we at the department really appreciate with you folks at the local level. Okay, so the purpose of you all coming together in person is to network as well. So we're going to do a little icebreaker so that we know who our audience is today, as well as you getting to know each other. So can I have, by a show of hands, all in the room that have less than 3 years experience in managing federal grants? Okay, keep your hands up. All those with 3 to 10 years, stand up. 3 to 10. 3 to 10. All the ones with 3 to 10, you can sit down. You put your hands down. How about anybody with over 10 years? You can stand up, stand up. Be proud. Wow, look at that. That's amazing. You are amazing. Oh, stay standing. Stay standing. Anybody over 10 years, stay standing. Now, all of you that have less than 10 years experience, I want you to choose somebody that is standing to be a partner with. You may have to have groups of 3. Go ahead, move. Stand up, move around. I don't want to play this game. Okay, if you are in your groups, you're going to have the next 5 minutes to share these 3 questions. Would you rather clean up the dishes? Would you rather go Black Friday shopping or watch Thanksgiving football?
Neither.
And would you rather work monthly at Thanksgiving dinner or spill your drink?
Spill my drink.
Although I'm not keen on spilling my drink, but.
Yes, I agree. I would rather not cook. I went shopping, and I'd rather.
Okay, I'm gonna have everybody return to their seats if you move. And have everybody's attention back.
Do they share these slides? Do they share these slides?
So I hope some of you met somebody new that you may not have known. That was kind of the goal. The DOE panel is going to share their thoughts of the 3 questions. Would you rather cook the Thanksgiving meal or clean up the dishes?
In my house, the rule is if you cook, you don't clean, and I have a catering company, so I would rather cook than clean.
Would you rather go Black Friday shopping or watch Thanksgiving football?
I just wait for that Black Friday shopping, so I just love it.
Would you rather work loudly at Thanksgiving dinner or spill your drink? In my house, you definitely do not want to spill your drink. You need that drink, trust me. For real. Okay, let's move on.
It's me. So every federal grant has period of allowability. That means every grant has obligation due date. So obligation is by which you need to purchase the material or the service needs to be performed. So in this slide, we will see when a state and sub-grantee makes obligation for various kinds of properties and services, like for acquisition of real and personal property, it will be obligated on the date on which the state and sub-grantee makes a binding written commitment to acquire the property. So for any personal services by an employee of the state and or sub-grantee, it will be obligated when the services are actually performed. So if for the employees who are our contract employee and not direct employee for the state or sub-grantee, the obligation will be made on the date on which the state or sub-grantee makes a binding written commitment to obtain the service. For travel, so for example, travel is obligated when the actual travel is taken. So for all of those services and products, the period of delivery of goods and services and exchange of funds can extend to the end of liquidation period, so long as timely and valid obligation has been made as per 34 CFR 76-707. So say for example, our latest federal emergency grant, which was ISA 2, we just passed the obligation due date on September 30th, 2023. So we know we have our date of liquidation is until December 30th, 2023. So until then, we can liquidate all of those services and the products that we purchased and which was obligated prior to or by September 30th, 2023. All right. Any questions on this one? Obligation.
So as you can tell, we're sharing things that are common across all programs. And another thing that is common across all programs is quarterly reporting. So you may have noticed in one of the many assurances that gets signed off by multiple people in whatever grant system that is being used, whether that's GEMS or Grants for Me, there's this notion of being sure that you're keeping your records up to date and maintaining documentation. So we just wanted to highlight this quarterly report. It is required. You should be entering it by the 15th of the month. And we are working on refining the way in which we review those and also confirm that those are being completed. So potentially if you're being monitored by either the Office of Federal Emergency Relief Programs or our federal friends from ESEA, that's one thing that we're really going to take a closer look at to be sure that this information is being updated regularly, at the very least quarterly.
Okay, so you're tracking your federal grants by fund and revenue codes. They should be unique to each federal grant, but for my grants that I oversee, which is ESEA, each title should have their own fund and revenue code. Those fund and revenue codes can be found in the financial accounting handbook that is embedded in the slide deck as a link. Also on your grant award notices, they appear there as well. This makes it easier when you are reporting to the state your expenses and revenues as well at the end of your fiscal year. So here is just Grants for Me. It tells you right where you can find your grant award notice. This is, so in FY24, we improved the look, we hope, by having a section, a section on the section page of your application where all grant award notices are. And you'll see that later on in the ESEA presentation. But the view on the right is from the GEM system. And that also will give you your fund and revenue codes for your grant.
And all of this information that's in these grant award notifications tied back to the school finance handbook. So if you have a question or you want to confirm the information, school finance has a handbook on their website that is extremely helpful, and that was what was on the previous slide as a screenshot from the handbook. So be sure you're visiting that to also confirm fund and revenue codes.
I asked a question.
Yeah.
Did you just say, Tyra, that fund and revenue codes are in every on-the notification list?
That's correct. I will show you how to get there later.
No, well, I know how to get there, but I just have never seen them. I guess I haven't.
Okay, so in this slide, we are saying some of the common requirements for invoicing that is applicable for all of our federal grants. So the invoices must be submitted in GEMS and grants for any. So I just got the other day an email asking me to review that invoice, and all those information was attached. So I would like you to know that, it's not possible for us to promptly review your invoice if you submit it in email. So it needs to be either submitted in GEM system or grant for any system. Grants for it, yeah. And these invoices must have a detailed trial balance that matches the billing period that you are invoicing for, and also the reimbursement amount that you are requesting. It got to be included in your trial balance, and the total, in general, the total matches. And invoice must be for expenses that has been expended. That means, like, we are not allowed to reimburse you for any prepayment, for any accrued amount. So it needs to be paid by you, and then you can request us reimbursement for that amount. And invoices cannot have a billing period longer than 3 months. So you can submit your invoice by 1 month, 2 months, but no more, and 3 months, but not more than 3 months. And invoice cannot span different fiscal years. That it happens when we see the submission at the end of the fiscal year, like June 30th of any year. So you cannot submit an invoice for May, June, July, because June and July actually falls under different fiscal years. So it got to be, until you have to, in that case, you have to submit 2 separate invoices for May and June, and then July. Okay, yeah. So, and in general, invoices cannot include any sales tax, because SAUs are actually mostly tax exempt. And as I mentioned, it cannot be for any deposits, prepayments, and accrual salaries. The expenses that you are requesting us for reimbursement, it got to be expended. So some of the reminders, we all know about this. I just want to have a refresher. So the reimbursement process, it generally takes in between 17 to 45 business days from invoice submission to reimbursement check received, of which the initial review of the invoice, we do it in between 5 to 10 business days. Then it goes to our DAFs, Department of Administrative and Financial Services. They start the process, and it takes 7 to 25 business days for their own review process and payment processing. And after that, there is 3 to 10 days additional business days that require the reimbursement checks to be made. So in total, it might take 17 to 45 business days. And it is a requirement to keep all of the records of the supporting documents. So we all know that some of the federal grants require you to submit all the supporting documents like trial balance, and on the top of the trial balance, you need to submit receipts, time on the sheet, or POs, like every supporting documents, citation. However, whether you submit those additional supporting documentation with your invoice or not, you got to keep it with yourself, because at any time we need to ask you to submit those information because of monitoring or audit purposes.
I just want to make a couple of notations for IDA on invoicing. We're trying to close out 22, and because of a lot of staff turnover in DAPs, things are moving extremely slow. So once you get the invoices that are in there now paid and it opens, we're going to allow you to fill out the rest of 22, no matter how long that period of time is, just so that we can make sure that you get paid before the liquidation date ends on you.
So we'll do that without any impact to your risk assessment. We'll talk about the risk assessment later. So go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that it will be processed in time. So the second thing, I'm being attacked from the back. The second thing is your business manager, your sped directors have been given until December 30th to finish the FY23 year-end report. So if you haven't heard from them, please touch base with them because we extended that deadline and I don't see it being extended again. And there was something else. Well, I'll think of it and we'll be back at 1:45. Do you have any questions on that?
I have a question on that, maybe it's for people who are more. For travel, hotels, airlines, and conferences where we have to take typically 30 days, 60 days, 90 days ahead, and we can't invoice, does anyone have a good methodology to track that? Because we have to charge the general ledger, but then we can't invoice. And in some cases, it is 2 or 3 months, we're registering for a conference ahead of time.
That would be a question for all of you.
So we have a lot.
I can travel.
I don't know about that, but we have a lot of this happening in Lewiston. We've developed a Google Doc that we track each grant. And so we will put the expenses in prepaid accounts. And then I also do a purchase order to the school department with the account number that we want to hit for the grant. Sorry. So that the account shows in the grant when you run your travel balance. And then once the travel occurs, I cancel the PO and I do a journal entry moving it from prepaid to the expense account.
So that sounds good. My question then is, if you follow that methodology on the invoicing side, how does DOE do that when they see a bunch of journal entries coming out of prepaid accounts from 5 months earlier? Is that a problem or not a problem with the DOE?
For IDA, if I see something like that come through on your reimbursement request, I may ask you for that documentation. I don't get to see it. So we should be clear at that point.
So it's not a problem, right? We always work to try to get to yes. It may not be yes on the onset, but we're always trying to work to make things feasible for all of us and doable.
So my question is, this 45 business days is becoming a huge issue in my district. I have a very angry superintendent right now, and he keeps yelling at me, asking why, and I have a title coordinator that needs to close out our 22, but I can't get paid for the last one, so I don't have to create an invoice fund, and they keep saying, well, your invoice fund should be there because we've approved it, but since we haven't gotten paid, it's not there, so there's this breakdown of things being stuck, and in these reimbursement models, that's making a huge issue.
I was speaking for IDA. Is the SCA doing the same thing?
No. Sorry, I'm not ESCA. You asked ESCA. I'm emergency relief, but.
So ESCA is closing out FY21 only. If you are a recipient of Tier 3 funds, that would be FY22, and we are allowing the grace that you can ask for the remaining available funds on those grants to get them closed out by the liquidation period.
I will say DAS has had huge turnover, and we're, Colleen and I and team are constantly, if you can see my email box, please prioritize, please prioritize. Funds are expiring. We're doing the best we can, we prioritize everything. I'm like, no. You need to prioritize what's going away. Then we'll move on. Anybody else?
And I do want you all to know that we have spoken with Link who is the developer for Grants for Maine, several times, trying to get it so that once we approve it at our level, you would be able to submit another invoice. And they continually stand on the basis that that is not their business model, and they will not allow that to happen.
So, time and effort is documentation that needs to be collected from any employee whose salaries are paid for from federal funds. And what that looks like is either a personal activity report, a semi-annual certification, or a modified stipend to the employee's time. We require it with the submission of every first invoice that includes salary and benefits on the IDEA side. So if you're submitting for reimbursement for salary and benefits, that first invoice that you submit needs to include a sampling of time and effort for those employees paid with those federal funds. It needs to reflect the actual time that they work or the percentage that they're working in that federal fund. And we do have information about that in the handbook, and there's a link in this PowerPoint for you to look at that. Any questions?
I'll try to speak louder. Does that work? I just have two questions actually. If I'm dealing for September 23 and I'm in October, I don't have time and effort yet for that period. So I'm assuming I don't include it for that first.
The most recently signed, so if that's last year's or the last period that you haven't signed, you would submit that. The next time that you submit, we may ask for an updated one, but it's the most recently signed time and effort.
What if they've not been in the grant before? If they've not been in the grant and they're new to this grant, I won't have a previous one.
So what Colleen said was it's a sample, right? So chances are you're gonna have more than one person that you are requesting salaries and benefits for. So I would choose somebody that's been around a little longer.
We have some grants with just one person in the grant, and if we change that, then we have to wait until we do our time and effort.
Yeah, so you're still gonna be doing time and effort for that, especially if they are not doing just that one job and being paid for with federal funds. You're going to do a performance and that is done monthly. That is not something that is done unless it's a consistent schedule.
Yeah, this is the person who has one job, is paid with these federal funds. But again, when they start in September, they've not been in that role before. I have no way to do that. So that means I hold up my 45-day invoicing until January when I can get the 6 months.
No, we wouldn't want you to delay. So we're just checking for compliance. So if you have a new person in that, you can send me the old person.
Okay.
We're just checking your time and effort to make sure it meets compliance. That's all.
My next question has to do with schedules that, on the time and effort or not required people, but you're semi-annual. What are we required to submit as far as their daily, monthly, weekly schedules?
You don't have to, if they're 100%, you just make that attestation for a quarter.
Tyler asked me for a schedule, said she would approve it this one time, but going forward I had to attach
On a semi.
I'm just looking for guidance on what that is.
It was a semi-annual that it wasn't 100%.
Oh, it was fixed schedule. So you're working with a fixed schedule part, which means you're not paying that employee solely with one federal fund. You must be combining federal funds.
That's really local only.
But then you can do a semi-annual.
And that's what it was. Okay.
Okay, I think you've got your lines crossed.
I just want to make one comment.
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing that I noticed on time and effort is people are certifying pay.
It's time.
It's time, it's the effort, it's not how they're paid. So if you're certifying that and you're saying so-and-so was paid 100% of their time with Title I funds, that's not a certification of their effort. That is only a certification of their pay.
So it should say 100% of their time engaged in Title I activities or
Correct.
entitled in. You're not talking about pay.
Right.
I'm just doing the template. We all have that template, right? We all have that semi-annual template. That's all I'm using. I was unclear when this happened. If I should have been including some sort of schedule for everyone I'm submitting, and you're telling me no, and if it's split in some fashion with another job, right, in the district?
No, it's semi-annual unless you pay with more than one federal fund.
Okay.
Or if that person splits their time between that and another. So they have special ed and have some Title I.
Okay.
Then you need to do it apart. When you brought that point up though, I did want to remind everybody that using your local entitlement funds for salaries and benefits is not advantageous financially because you lose the Maine PERS match. And it's a significant amount of money. I don't know, does anybody know what it is today?
21 employees.
I would say about 20-ish% of your funds. So, we have $1 million recipient we have a recipient that spends about $1 million. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And there's other ways to spend the money where you don't lose that percentage. So I just wanted to point that out. And it's on Maine PERS employees only. So you might have ed tech ones that don't have PERS. Anyway, that was my question.
Is there a way to kind of get a cheat sheet on this? Kind of like the sheet that you showed before on when something is committed for funds that says 100% out of a federal grant, semi-annual, partial federal, partial local is this report. If it's a stipend like they're doing a family night, what is the form? Is there a way that so that we're consistent in how we're doing it in each of our offices?
Well, Ms. Ida Batista is in the back there, and school finance goes through the subsidy formula, so they would have that magic information like supplies. Use IDA funds on supplies because you don't get it back to
No, I'm talking just kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
So
not whether it's semi-annual or whatever form we should be submitting.
yes, so there is a cheat sheet on the website. It's on the ESEA webpage under, I believe it's state resources. That was fun.
I have a question. We have several ed techs, special ed, that we do timesheets for, and we have all these people signing off, administrators, employees, so forth. We want to move them to electronic. So what do I send you? What path do you need?
You can take it, it's the same thing for you.
Yeah, so when using timesheets, like even at the state level, we are paid the federal funds and we use timesheets as well, electronic timesheets. It needs to say the amount of hours and then somewhere IDA grant was used on there. Obviously, some kind of identification of the person, their position.
As you build it out, send us what you would like it to look like, and we'll come back and say, oh, you need this component or that, and then you can add it to your system.
That's probably the best.
I think the key thing is thinking about how you're going to convert a wet signature to a wet electronic.
Right, that's my question.
Right? It still has to have some validity in regards to who's been reviewing it and approving it. Because I can go into an Excel file and type a name and say Tyra's signed it, right? And she could owe me $1 million and I could have a yacht in my backyard. Nobody even any wiser, right? So how do you convert that wet pen signature to a wet electronic signature. You can do that through a different sets of modalities, whether that is DocuSign or some other electronic signature methods.
Okay.
This is you.
So all federal grants require some written policies and procedures. And ESEA does monitor for this as well. But at a minimum, you should have a written travel reimbursement policy. This policy needs to be separate from your teacher's contract. Procurement standards. This needs to include a conflict of interest, which I have referenced up here, Edgar, 2 CFR 200.475 for the travel, 300.317 is for the conflict of interest for procurement standards. You should also have a written procurement procedure. So this is going to set some components for monitoring and oversight of any subcontracts that you may have. Now this goes right down to if you have a contract with a consultant or a literature specialist. If these components are part of your procurement procedures, it helps avoid purchasing unnecessary duplicate items. You're going to award contracts to responsible contractors. And it allows for free and open competition. That is really key. I know I have some rural districts that I worked with way back that said, there's nobody else that we can contract with. We're up here and there ain't nobody for $100. I understand that. And that's when there would be a waiver, right, for a competitive bid process. And always maintain sufficient procurement history. So when you're invoicing for contracted services, many of you know I will ask to see the contract. Okay. MSMA has a multitude of templates that will get you here. If you don't already have these procedures or policies in place, they have excellent templates for this.
Oh, you have a comment? Sorry, I just really thought it was done. And it was a comment. So, I don't know, some of you may have done it, but a few years back, we brought Christine Minasevich to Maine to go over written policies and procedures, and they brought a template to Maine for you to use, and I'm happy to give that to Joanne or any one of you to request, so that you can go through your policies and procedures and just make sure that you're in compliance. It gives you suggested language and whatnot.
Just a bizarre question. With COVID funds, did anybody purchase some laptops? A few hands?
I think so.
Did anybody happen to purchase some PPE equipment?
Yep.
All right, here's the bigger question. Did any of you happen to purchase a small van to be able to do multiple trips with a licensed driver but not CDL?
Yes.
Because we were having some bus drive shortages. I see some hands. How about a oversized refrigerator because your single service meals were at capacity? Right? So there was a fair amount of items purchased with COVID funds that potentially may not have been purchased with other federal funds. However, inventory and a policy of maintaining that inventory has been here as long as federal funds have been here. So being sure that you understand what it means to document and to identify what you have in your building and in your space that you've purchased with federal funds, whether they're COVID funds, whether they're title funds, whether they're IDEA funds, all of our funds have this policy requirement of being sure that you inventory it. And you know, sometimes statutory language might sound like Charlie Brown's teacher. We love being sure that we can point everyone to the place in which defines what you need. So we have some CFR language here, and they're hyperlinked, but essentially being sure that you have that physical inventory of the property that was purchased with any federal funds is critical. In the same token, oh, my laptop's over there, but there may be a few laptops around the room that have a little label on it that says, number so-and-so, user so-and-so, purchased on such and such a date. I know mine does, because mine was purchased with federal funds. This is the type of items that every item that is at an equipment threshold must have. I think I responded to the question because the hand went down, but I just want to confirm.
Yeah, I was just looking at the dollar, when you say that you purchase laptops are well under
The $5,000 threshold. However, is it good to know how many laptops that you purchase with federal funds? So inventory is a huge thing.
It's good to know, but we have to have it, we have to have a list that someone can come after. Of course, our IT guy keeps that, but it's not necessarily part of our budget.
Knowing you have it is the best policy, right? Knowing you can obtain it, but it will not be part of your inventory list because the inventory list is for equipment. At a federal level, the threshold for equipment is a per unit price of $5,000 or more, which is why I asked about the vans and the oversized refrigerators. Any other questions about inventory? No one else volunteered for this slide, and I'm not sure why. However, I think we, as federal emergency relief funds, probably created the most uproar because as a policy, federal funds and food don't go in the same sentence, right? If some of you stood up when you've been in this role for more than 10 years, tell me the last time you were able to put in a receipt for some goodies and a meal, right? I see some shakes and some confirmation. So, federal funds should not be used for food. There are ways in which, if it is critical to the learning and the outcome, potentially you might have a situation on a very rare circumstance that lunch is being provided with federal funds because it is critical to the outcome of that program. There are some things that if you are going to make that justification, you as a district will need to have that burden of proof ready at hand for any invoice that would come across our desk. And we will scrutinize across the board that invoice more than any other invoice. And we will need to see what was the learning outcome, how many number of participants, where you made it reasonable and necessary. So those are all things that you want to keep in mind. Now, we also work in our office with other sources of funding that came under emergency relief funding, like ARP-HCY and our sub-grant, which was the multilingual students experiencing homelessness. And there are different parameters, particularly under ARP-HCY, when it comes to a student who is unhoused with the need to be able to be fed. However, if you read through the FAQ, particularly for ARP-HCY, it really strongly encourages you as a district and as an entity to seek other funding sources for any type of food. Did I get gift cards too? Did I really? Oh, I did.
Just don't do it.
Just don't do it, right? Gift cards. Again, I probably got this slide because I think with emergency relief funds, there was a lot more flexibility. However, we as a team, but anyone who has any inkling of what's coming down the pipe for emergency relief funds knows that that is going to be a very scrutinized funding source. So it may not have been scrutinized in 2022 or 2021 or 2020. However, the further we get away from the pandemic, the more folks are intrigued by how the funding was used and if it was used appropriately and how it affected student learning outcomes. So I get gift cards because they're really not allowed, except for in emergency relief funding, ARP HCY in the federal guidance says gift cards potentially could be a reasonable and necessary expense for a district to get reimbursed for. However, if you proceed and you look nationwide what others are doing, it is really saying you as a district is taking a risk by purchasing a gift card that you do not have any authority over or have any ability to be able to track and make sure that the purchases on those gift cards are allowable, reasonable, and necessary. So if we see a gift card, we always ask for the documentation related to that gift card. So did you ask the parent, which I know could be burdensome, how many times they used the gift card? Where are the receipts? What was purchased with it? What type of parameters and what type of risk is the district willing to take on that potential unallowable expense that might be put onto a gift card? Terry?
I know in Bedford, we work with the Hanfords, and the gift cards that we were able to purchase were restricted, and they're not allowed to buy alcohol, they're not allowed to buy cigarettes or anything else. And those are the only gift cards that we were purchasing at that time.
And that's a great precaution, right? To be able to work with an entity like Hanford, and I know Walmart does the same, has the same ability. However, what happens is these need to be reasonable and necessary. So if you bought a gift card for $250 for a family that is supposed to feed them for the month, and they went and splurged and purchased a lobster bake, I heard is happening in the near future, and maybe some Sea Dog biscuits at a Sea Dogs game. That's the component that we want to be mindful of. What is reasonable and necessary, and how would you as a district determine you are going to denote that in your audit as well as in your monitoring process. So in general, when some folks refer to it as when Shelley's funds go away, but when the emergency relief funds go away, remember we reset all of those rules. The waivers and the provisions that came about in the emergency pandemic funds are not going to live on.
You got the job of saying no, and I get Davis Bacon, so. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I've heard some federal whispers that the equipment threshold is moving to 10,000 soon, so stay tuned. It hasn't officially happened, but it could happen. And that you have to do inventory audit semi-annually. I'm avoiding Davis Bacon, but here it is. If you have made any changes, any capital improvements, any fixed improvements to your buildings that exceeds $2,000, like you can't go grocery shopping for that, but $2,000, then Davis Bacon is coming into play with federal funds. It's not something that we've had a lot of conversation about until relief funds came along. Thank you so much. And basically, it's just ensuring that you can't hire outside contractors for less than the prevailing wage of your geographic location. And there's a lot of legalese that goes with that. And if you have questions, I'll take them all down, but I don't think we'll be answering them. We'll be taking them back and then getting back to you through Joanne. So if you have questions on Davis Bacon, if you could kind of compile an email and have Joanne could collect all of them and send them over at once. We'll have somebody who knows more than we do answer your questions. So.
And we also know that it's one of those low-hanging fruits for the auditors, right? So I'm sure Tyler's organization is looking at Davis Bacon across the board because even having a new even having a new playground set installed and that work of reconfiguring things, that all falls under Davis-Bacon, where your HVAC systems, which we all wanted great air to be able to breathe and to work and learn in, those all fall under Davis-Bacon.
So basically, if it's fixed to your building, it's gonna qualify. Oh, Tyler has
Yeah,
something
well,
to add.
can I make a note on that? It's the total price of the project. So I've seen cases where the labor was $150, but they're buying a $3,000 piece of equipment. It still qualifies. You still have to do Davis-Bacon for that project.
It does, and it doesn't matter what percentage of federal funds you use for that. If you use federal funds at all, it qualifies.
So speaking about the things that you purchase with federal funds, regardless of which program any federal funds have been utilized, you should be denoting that item, that purchase, that good, that service is being supported with federal funds. So I think we used an example here about a transportation vehicle, but essentially a district has requested some in their approved application to be able to make smaller runs because bus runs were minimal on the onset of the pandemic, and that vehicle was $105,000. 65% of it was funded with ARP and 35% was funded with a non-governmental funding source. So that goes for anything, whether it's Title II professional development that you're offering. If that is being supported with federal funds, there should be a disclaimer. If it's the minivan that you're driving around, if you could have a little tag on it that says, Shelley paid for this, that would be great. No, because I really don't look good in orange, so please don't indicate that I told you that. But those are the things you should be thinking about, is how do we give credit, quote unquote, to the funding source in which allowed us to be able to make this purchase or to have this good and service. Speaking of orange jumpsuits.
Okay, so reporting fraud, waste, and abuse. The US DOE requires everyone to publicly post the following message. So if you do not have that publicly posted, please look to do that in the very near future. It is posted on our website, and so that you have a template to go by. Post it on your webpage, post it in your business office, wherever you need to do that. But this is a federal requirement. And a priority notice just went out. So everybody should have got that priority notice.
So, we are going to have business office hours the fourth Thursday of every month starting in November, and I think it's November 30th. At 10 a.m. There'll be a link, and if you have a copy of this, you can get the link off the PowerPoint, or if you want to email any one of us, we can send you the link. We're working on some team newsletters to be sent out. Each team also hosts individual office hours, and the dates and times for those are listed here. We'll do them as often as you like, and we'd like to get suggestions on specific topics that you want us to train on or talk about. I know for our team, the Aussie team, it's going to be very fiscal focused. Our director does a monthly sort of director's meeting that's office hour kind of spaced as well. So if you have questions or you have requests for training, please let us know so we can get those in place each month when we offer these. Sometimes we have 5 people show up, sometimes we have 70 people show up, and we're happy to keep the format how you like it. If you want an open forum, for us specifically, we're happy to do that, or more specific detailed training for things that are coming up. Question?
Yeah, for you or anyone, have a
file a complaint, and the address and the phone number. So
We normally see it in the staff handbooks.
right.
Yes.
The DOE website. And it's on, Jeanette, is it on the federal programs page?
Yeah, it's on the federal programs homepage, so it should be on there. Accessible. And I'm creating a Q&A document, so I'll hyperlink it and provide it back to you.
So what I want to do, I know Colleen touched upon it, but this business office hour, the fourth Thursday of the month, is generated for you folks. And it will have representation like you see here today. So we have heard you folks, and we completely understand that you are a person of one or a team of two, or maybe a little bit more within your office. However, it is very difficult to attend 1 hour of federal emergency relief funding, 1 hour of OXI, 1 hour of ESEA. So what we've selected to do as a collaborative team within the department is create this 1 hour a month that is just, let's talk money. You have a question about money, you have something that you want to ask Maisha about federal emergency relief funds because your Carissa Easter 2 invoice has come back 3 times and you just feel like it's a moving target and you need some help, jump into that 1 hour. There will be at least one representative from every single team to support your questions.
Including child nutrition, school finance.
Including child nutrition and school finance when their team starts growing a little bit more and they have the capacity. But any question you have that relates to money, it's all about the Benjamins, right? So if you have a question that relates to money, join us the 4th Thursday at 10 a.m. If we cannot answer it based on the expertise in the room, we will take your question. We will work on generating the response that we need from our colleagues, and we will be sure you get your answer, the answer that you need from the expert at hand. And this is us, and our contact information. So that's everything we had for you folks today, but we're here, we would love questions, and I'm gonna pass the mic to someone else.
Chandra, we'll have copies of this.
What we will do is, we wanted to be sure we had everything finalized before sending it to Joanne. Joanne did ask us to make sure that we send our slides to her. You will receive our collaborative slides, but also each of our individual presentations will be sent to Joanne, because that's what we'll be doing after lunch. Tyler, you want the mic? Oh, yeah, you do, of course you do.
Well, so because they may not relate to education funds, but they may relate to you, there are 2 new provisions within Appendix 2 of 2 CFR Part 200. So one of them being under the Build Back Better America Act. And so if you're procuring certain types of material, you have to try and certify that you tried to buy American made first. So especially there's some other federal funds that aren't coming through the education that may apply to. And then there's another one around telecommunications. And so if you're buying like electronics, you can't buy Hawaii, I can't pronounce it. But there's a couple of companies you can't buy their products. So just keep that in mind. So they're not necessarily DOE, but, which is why I wanted.
I mean, we make enough rules already.
I know. I didn't want anybody to get caught up on their audit, so.
Any questions about the general topics that we shared that are cohesive across all of our federal programs? Is this where I can see? I appreciate you folks playing into my humor. Like I said, it's something that we try to do to incorporate into our work to make it enjoyable.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions before before. We're gonna have lunch here very shortly. Any other questions or any other items to be brought up while we have a few minutes? Enjoy lunch, and then we'll be back this afternoon.
Somebody did good, you'd be better off sleeping in the car.
The what?
We were on it, and then,
Aren't they hosting families at the moment that are refugees, families? Yeah.
Did you spend the night there?
No, I didn't.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no.
You know what I'm doing traveling now? I am staying at Airbnbs and they've been wonderful.
I've never tried mine.
Oh, I highly recommend it. They're cleaner. You rate them, they rate you. It's nice. Oh, my friend wants to ask you, do they have onboarding new hire paperwork?
Yes.
They do?
Yeah. Yeah, you can upload.
Well, you can hire people through it, and then you send the new hire paperwork. Then it comes back in, it will populate payroll and all that stuff. You have to manually do it.
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't think so. But I know you can upload everything, all their new hire stuff, into their personnel file. And I've been doing that. I've been uploading W-4s, and then the employee has the employee module where they can look at it.
I think Applecat Track or something.
Applecat, yeah. No, I've been uploading into ActiveFund everybody's personnel stuff so that they don't have to ask me, what's my withholding? What's my bank, what's my bank information, all that stuff. But it's taken time, to scan everything.
What are you guys doing for changing direct deposits? We're making them come in because I've got so many good emails.
In person.
We did get one, she actually knew
I had a fraud last year, $900. And the funny thing was she emailed me to change her account. I said to her in person, I got your email and I can change that over to the new bank. And she says, okay, thank you. And then when it went through to payroll, the second payroll, she says, I didn't get paid. And I'm like, you changed your bank. Remember we talked about it? She goes, oh, I thought you were talking about the school's bank was changing. I'm like, oh. So she totally was like oblivious. So from now on, I said, you're doing
That's what
it.
we're doing.
We're doing it in writing.
And they all appreciate it.
Welcome back, folks.
Absolutely.
I hope everyone enjoyed their lunch. That first question from our activity earlier, it asked if you wanted to cook Thanksgiving dinner or if you wanted to clean up the dishes. I wanted neither, which is why I didn't respond to the question. So I love opportunities like this to have some wonderful staff and some kids who are learning and experiencing what we have to offer for them. So thank you everyone here at the Green Ladle for a wonderful lunch. Hope your bellies are full.
Yeah.
So the way we structured this afternoon is really to be specific about each federal program that we introduced earlier this morning. Again, for those who need a little bit more of the correlation, Maisha and myself are with the Office of Federal Emergency Relief Programs. However, we're a much larger team than just two. In our office, we have over $1 billion with a B dollars. So we have some folks who did not join us today, but do support the work we do within our office. So I'm going to start on the far left. Karen Kuziak, she is our CARES, Carissa, and now our ARP ESER coordinator, because some of you may have worked with Monique Sullivan Monique has transitioned into a role with school improvement in the ESEA team. So still servicing the department, just transitions to our ESEA federal friends. So Karen is your point of contact should you have anything related to Carissa as we're closing that out, or any concerns or questions about ARP and revisions to applications. I'm going to jump to Kevin Harrington. Some of you may have had the opportunity to work with Kevin. However, Kevin does a subsection of the work that we do in our office that is specifically focused to our non-publics, as well as to any of our gear initiatives. And our gear initiatives early on in the programs and the funds were really related to the Moose Project, contact tracers, and now our most recent 3 years in is the Maine Outdoor Learning Initiative. If you haven't heard about the Maine Outdoor Learning Initiative, the request for proposal is going to be coming out by December 1st. I would encourage you to visit the Maine DOE procurement site, which will have information about that. If you're engaging in an opportunity at a local level for students 6th through 12th grade and engaging in outdoor experiential learning, there's some funding available that potentially you might be interested in. I'm going to skip over Maisha because she's with us today. Natalie Owens is the newest member of our team. She is our procurement analyst. So she really supports all of those reservation projects. The funding that did not go directly to you folks by statutory language, we can maintain at the department. And we've been able to create projects. For example, a mask project when you folks needed the PPE, or the Maine Outdoor Learning, as I mentioned. Our most recent project is the Multilingual and Homeless, Students Experiencing Homelessness project. So we do a fair amount of reservation work, and Natalie helps us with the procurement of that work.
I am Maisha. As I said, I am in the reimbursement side of our office, so I manage the reimbursement, and we have two wonderful team members, Diana Roberts and Terry Bill. So they are the management analysts and the invoice reviewers, and I'm sure most of you work with them directly. So they help us to make sure all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted in terms of invoices and reimbursement. So yeah, in this session, we find that these are some of the topics that we would like to go through with you, just to emphasize those, like closeout of ISA 2, liquidation extension, invoicing instruction, alignment, 10% overage, reporting, and dashboard data.
So we're going to talk a little bit about closeout because that's where we are with our Carissa funds, which is we also refer to as ESER 2. And essentially what happens is your period of performance for Carissa was through 9/30 of 2024. And then from 10/1/23 to 12/30/23 is when you can close out. So you may have had something that you obligated prior to 9/30 that potentially didn't come in, or the services were delayed. And that window from October to the end of December allows you to submit the invoice to be able to receive reimbursement for it. So just a few things about closeout is this notion about a late liquidation extension. So the October through December is an automatic 120 days, and you might be thinking, well, Shelley, that doesn't mathematically add up. Because 120 days takes us out to the end of January. However, we also have a dual review process where we have to review it, and also our colleagues in DAFS has to review it. So DAFS needs the full month of January to assist us collectively as the SEA and the SAUs to close out. So we need your invoices in for Carissa ESER 2 by December 30th. However, we are encouraging you folks to think about earlier in that month about making sure you have all your invoices in, because if for some reason there's an error or a returned invoice after December 30th, we essentially don't have any time to be able to process or address those errors that we might need to have resolved. So, you may have heard about late liquidation extension. What that means is an opportunity for an entity, whether it be the SBA or the SAU, to request more time to submit an invoice for something that was properly and timely obligated before 9/30/23. Now, if you go into an obligation prior to that 9/30/2023, knowing that you're trying to get as much time as you can, that is not good stewardship of the funding. So really embarking in your obligations, keeping in mind that you want to be true and good stewards of the funding, and that you are trying to do your due diligence to get everything completed before 9/30. However, with the pandemic, there has been some circumstances where things have taken longer, where orders have been back ordered for months and months and months. These are the types of things that might be eligible for late liquidation extension. We do not approve or deny the late liquidation extension. The U.S. Department of Ed approves or denies the late liquidation extension. We are the pass-through entity, so we collect the information from you folks, and then we submit it on your behalf to the U.S. Department of Ed. So we are not the awarding agency of that late liquidation extension approval. So when we think about those dates, it's really important to kind of keep in mind, what does that mean? Because in the middle of September, the U.S. Department of Ed said, hey, we know that this was challenging for Carissa, and you may have had some areas where you needed that additional time and needed the option for late liquidation extension. We're foreshadowing and seeing that need again for ARP, because as you know, ARP was at least 3 times more funding than either 2 of our previous packages. So, middle of September, the U.S. Department of Ed said, this process seems to work. I think we're going to keep it for ARP. Again, being mindful that we want to be good stewards of the funding. So being sure that you're obligating timely and properly. So if you have an expense and an obligation that may fall into a late liquidation extension concept, we had an office hour at the beginning of October that was devoted only to late liquidation extension. We are requiring you to submit your information in the form here on the slide by November 29th. And essentially that form is asking all of those critical questions that are required for us to submit to the U.S. Department of Ed. So that might be, how much was your award? When did you obligate the funds? How much have you drawn down? How much do you think falls into this late liquidation extension concept? Okay? Questions about late liquidation extension before we move on to another really exciting topic. Our October office hour is on our website, and it also has all the links associated with the form to complete.
So in this section, we would like to just show you the requirements of our ISA 2 ONCARSA and here ISA 3 invoicing in terms of what documents are needed and what supporting documentation are required. So for ISA 2 and ISA 3, for both of them, we need a detailed trial balance where the billing period needs to match, and also the amounts need to be exactly matched what you are invoicing us for. And copies of paid receipts and POs. So for ISA 2, we are not required you to submit it with your invoice submission. However, you need to keep it with yourself so that whenever we need, we may ask you for monitoring and audit purposes. All those supporting documentation, even though you are not submitting it with your reimbursement request. But for ARP, as ARP is very expensive, I mean, we require you to attach all those information, supporting information on the top of the trial balance with your reimbursement request submission. And Apart from trial balance and supporting documentation, we would like you to submit a list of invoices. It is very important, especially for ARP, because ARP has lots of different projects, lots of invoices. If you could list those invoices that you are submitting in a particular reimbursement request by project category, that will be very helpful for our reviewers to review those, because our process is, in the review process, we try to align what you are submitting in that invoice in GEM system and what you are providing in the trial balance and the supporting documentation. So it helps us to keep track of those supporting documentation and help us to increase the speed of the review process. So some points to remember, like these funds, we follow reimbursement model. As earlier I mentioned, like the expenses that you are request as reimbursement, it needs to be expended, it needs to be incurred. So we cannot pay for any prepayment, deposit or accruals. And yeah, I just want to mention that accruals, like especially it happens quite a lot when at the end you have some salaries accrued, but I mean, we all just miss that. I mean, we cannot put those accrual salaries for that month of invoice. That needs to be requested for the next month or following month. Then sales tax, oh, sorry, it's okay. And yeah, the sales tax is not an allowable expense. And if there is, as I mentioned, like we also align the invoice and the application side of the GEM system. So if you are submitting an expense under a category, under a project, please make sure that category has budget allocated. And records like receipts, POs, time and report sheet, everything needs to be maintained regardless of invoice submission requirement for monitoring and audit purposes. And we do have this invoicing information available in our DOE side under resources. So we talked about invoicing with alignment a lot. So as I mentioned, it is always get aligned with the application, with your invoice, and in the invoice side, GEM system and what you are submitting with your trial balance and all the supporting documentation. So expenses need to be budgeted in the application. In this example, we just like to show you like the object code in the upper table. So that means $260,000 is allocated in the application side of it. So then in the below table is a snapshot from the invoice submitted. So then you can invoice us. Like in this case, they invoice 7,000, about 7,000 under that purchase service category. So there should be a budget, it cannot be a zero. Then align expenses on trial balance and other documentation. So upper table is a snapshot from the GEM system where the total invoiced amount requested is $9,586 and we match it with the submitted invoice for that with that reimbursement request, and where you can see the net amount is also exactly the same amount. Align object codes with expenses in the approved projects. So in the object code, we find that so you have budget for purchase services, but when you are invoicing us, sometimes we find that you are putting it under supplies. Or there is like, even like you have quoted in the trial balance in a different code other than purchase services. So what we need you to do is, these all needs to be aligned. So if you are budgeted for something for purchase services and it is purchase services, then it needs to be quoted under purchase services, under the code 3,500. So yeah, so like if it is purchase services, it needs to be coded properly on your side, accounting side, and it needs to be coded similarly in in your reimbursement side as well. Okay, so 10% overage. So there is we allow you to adjust your expenses within the 10%. There is a 10% where 10% like variance, yeah, that we allow within your budget, but it is different for ESA 2 and ESA 3. So in ESA 2, an invoice can overexpend in multiple categories in that if that overage is offset in another category and collectively does not exceed 10% of the SAU allocation. So in ESA 2, the 10% is calculated on the total allocation for any particular SAU, whereas in ARP, we make it effective from February of this year. Like this 10%, we allow you to do that 10% overage within one project and within the category of under a project. So you and the project budget or the remaining project budget can never be a negative amount. So these are the two restrictions that we have to follow, but you can make the request that additional amount in between categories under a particular project. So here is an example. So on the top, it is showing 118,000 over what is budgeted for additional social worker support. So it is a snapshot from ARP. So in ARP, if the total budget cannot be a negative number. So in such case, you will see there that your invoice is reopened. In the second one, even though you can see that under salary and benefits, it is over what was budgeted. It is over what was budgeted. It is over $99, and but the total budget is still a positive number, and also this $99 is within the limit of 10% of the project budget, 1,772. Is there any question about 10% overage? I know you always do that, I know that, but if you have any question, you can definitely ask me later on.
So we just wanted to highlight a few reports that have some financial components to it because we think it's important to be able to establish conversation between our applicant coordinators and our business managers, because essentially to make that machine work well, there needs to be some communication and some check-ins. So every year we ask for a performance report, and that performance report does have some financial information into it. The screenshot on the right with the highlighted number in blue at the top is essentially what we have in our GEM system that has been requested for expenses during that performance period. And we're asking our program coordinators, and I will be honest, this will look a little different in the coming year because the Department of Ed has actually asked for more granular data than you see here. So again, it's going to be that conversation between your applicant coordinator and our business managers to be able to say, hey, what was that activity and how much did we spend on that one project? Because I need to know, when I'm reporting it in this annual performance report, was that part of a learning loss project, or was it just kind of general expenses? That is one area that I know the U.S. Department of Ed is really starting to track and ask questions about. So I don't know how you folks are denoting in your systems, if you as business managers or applicant coordinators are denoting just projects, but they are asking how many dollars was spent in the learning loss projects. Your applicant coordinators are going to be well aware of what that is because it's one section of the budget versus the remaining projects, which is a separate section of the budget. Another component that relates to money, some of you folks may have engaged in conversations with your applicant coordinators and leadership at your district level, is maintenance of equity. So if you were not exempt, you needed to confirm that you were not reducing greater than any other school within your district by fiscal and staffing. So we've been working with the 45 school districts in Maine who needed to show that they were meeting maintenance of equity. So if you haven't heard from us, it's not a party you want to be invited to. So just be aware that if you are a school district that is still currently not meeting maintenance of equity for FY23, you likely will get increased conversations in the next couple weeks because we as a department need to have information posted on our website publicly available by December 30th. And we're doing our due diligence to make sure that if there is a school district who is not meeting maintenance of equity for either fiscal or staffing, we're engaging in conversation and probing questions and really supporting the district to identify if that truly is the case before we put a red no on a publicly facing website. So again, with ARP came lots and lots of money, which makes us super excited. However, with the lots and lots of money come these components that are requirements of the lots and lots of money. So one of them that I draw your attention to is the use of funds plan, as well as the return to instruction plan. And you may think, well, goodness gracious, we're all back in the building. Who cares about how we're getting back here, right? We're here. However, per statute, that return to instruction plan should be revised and reviewed and revised if applicable every 6 months. U.S. Department of Ed is asking state agencies for the links for school districts for the safe return to in-person plans, as well as the use of ARP funds plans. So a district could self-select how they were going to determine and the way in which they posted that on their website. However, it has to be publicly available on your website, and they are checking. They being the U.S. Department of Ed. They're also checking alignment, so that's going to be key. You may think to yourself, oh, I posted that way back when and I'm good, right? However, if there's been any revisions and the plan that is posted online does not match to the annual performance report that you submitted, that we submit to the U.S. Department of Ed, they're starting to make that correlation of the disconnect and the lack of updating on a publicly facing website. We talked about these funds being high risk, and because we're in a formal setting today, I did pull out Curious George, but we have a slide where it's a cute little Curious George, and he's got his binoculars and his eyes are really big. That is where we are with these funds. So the next thing is monitoring. You may have been monitored by our friends from the ESEA program. You may be monitored from us. You may be monitored from IDEA. What we are trying to do as an office is, if we've already asked the district for a travel policy under ESEA, and then Office of Federal Emergency Relief is also monitoring that district, we're hoping to be able to find a way to have these conversations internally and say, hey, I think Shelley's school district was being monitored in ESEA. By chance, did they have a travel policy? Instead of going back to you folks, because we know everyone is working a lot and putting in a lot of time and energy, that if we already have that information, we're trying to avoid asking you for it again. You will see more information about Office of Federal Emergency Relief Programs and monitoring coming in the next month. I wish it was a year. All right, a couple other things. As publicly available plans for you folks. We as a state also have some ownership and transparency in the funds. So if you haven't visited the Office of Federal Emergency website, there is a dashboard. It has this cute little button that says, how are the funds being used? It is updated monthly with the information that we collect and populate that you folks have submitted in GEMS. So, you can see it overall here. Kudos. This bubble, and this is a little out of date because I think that's a March drop-down menu. So right now we're at 0.3% of CARES was returned. This is actually just under 6% now. That donut should have a lot less blue. We are hoping that this donut has a lot less blue in the next coming months as CARES expires and you're using a different funding source. But what happens is we also have that granular data. So anyone can come to the dashboard, can filter out by schools, and my apologies, the copy and paste made the text extremely ineligible. But essentially what happens is there's a school district, there's CARES, CARISA, ARP, and total. This is your allocation. This is what's remaining in percentages as well as dollar values. It also shows what you have invoiced. So, I'm not even going to talk about CARISA because I hope you've already spent all your money, you've already invoiced, and that means you're not getting calls from us. However, there are still some colleagues and friends who have over 50% of their CARISA ESER 2 funds that have not been invoiced. So if you happen to engage in conversation, I would encourage you to probe and make sure those funds are being utilized and being invoiced. They needed to be timely and properly obligated before 9/30. And we're supporting the districts. Those are the invoices that our team is reviewing first because we know they're critical. However, as much as we'd like to kick the can down the road's coming to an end really quickly. So what I've presented you with here is the ARP funds that are remaining at the district level. So that is $200 million, in case you don't get to see a number that large all that often. So we still, as a state at the local level, have over $200 million that has not been drawn down or requested. So here is zero, and it's a financial and a timeline up and under. So 0%, 9/30/24. We started ARP, your application was due September of 21, 100%. So in between 100% and 75%, we still have 44 districts who still have 75 to 100% of their allocation remaining. And if we correlate that to the timeline, by July 1st of 22, you should already be sitting in this 75% if we're correlating the timeline to spending, which many are doing currently nationwide. So we have 318 days for $200 million. Wow. So any paper you open in the last 4 months is saying, what are we doing with the funds? Nobody's drawing it down. We didn't need this money. We didn't have the needs. Students aren't doing well. Student lending is still down the tubes. And we don't want our main story to be what we're reading on the national newspapers. I come pleading because we need your help, right? If you are 6 months behind in invoicing, a year, potentially even 2 years behind in invoicing, we know you have the expenses, right? We know you did wonderful work with these funds. We just need the data and the numbers to say what a great job we did. So we are always here to help. We have an office hour every Thursday, first Thursday of every month. We really talk to our program coordinators about what's happening, the things that are coming out of the U.S. Department of Ed. However, we also, for the last three weeks, we really really wanted to support you folks. Focused on Carissa invoicing, because at the end of July, we still had $3.2 million of Carissa funding that needed to be drawn down. And what we decided to do was we decided to have a no agenda open office hour. So every Wednesday since the beginning of November till the middle of December, there will be at least one of our teammates. Usually you get 3 of us. And we sit there for an hour from 11 to noon, and we address any question that you have. And that is essentially an open, no agenda office hour. You can pop in. If you happen to be, running out of another meeting and it's 11:35, and you're like, oh my goodness, I've got that Easter question, we're there every Wednesday until the middle of December at 11 o'clock on Wednesday. 11 to noon, there's always somebody there. This Wednesday, we kind of lost track of time. We were there till 12:15. But we are there to help you, and we want to be able to support you folks. We know you have a lot on your plate. We are also trying collectively as a department to find ways to streamline and to support collectively. So don't be surprised if you happen to have a colleague of ours who says, hey, you have a little bit of money here in title programs. However, I also know from my colleagues that you have X number of dollars of emergency relief funding. Because you're only one and we're multiple, and we don't want to be bombarding you folks. We really want to be able to support you folks. Again, that's our contact information. Any questions related to the emergency relief funding? Doom and gloom, I know. Tyra's up with ESCA.
What if they got any extra you can ask for?
Spread it to other schools.
Right, if they can't spend it.
Roll and I'll catch up to you.
It's hard to believe it's 200 million.
I know.
That's a huge number.
Okay, so I do have a slide presentation for this section. And Shelley is doing her best to bring that up for you all. I am going to revert to my slide notes so that I don't end up in an orange jumpsuit by the end of this. But I will start by saying that success begins with communication. It is very important that you have communication internally. So all business managers, bookkeepers need to be communicating with your ESCA coordinators. It's vital for the success of your programs. I suggest having quarterly meetings, if at all possible. Put those on your calendars. That way it aligns with the application deadline, the performance report deadline, which are very important dates as well. And I will reiterate that a little later on in the slideshow.
I pressed all the buttons. Where's the nice lady with the brown button?
There we go. All right. So, externally, you can reach out to the DOE at any time. You can reach out to my team at any time for help. I have here linked several important web pages that will provide you with resources. The ESCA newsletter, which has a fiscal corner in it, is emailed the first Tuesday of every month. That email goes out to ESCA coordinators as well as business managers, or in grants for me, it's the LPA fiscal representative.
ESEA office hours is the second Tuesday of every month. I also participate in those as well. And as you heard earlier, we are doing a federal programs fiscal office hours, which will have representatives from all federal programs, and that's the last Thursday of every month. You can access registration for that office hour at the Maine DOE event calendar. This is my team. These are the contacts for the team, and you can reach out to any of them at any given time. So the ESEA Federal Grant Management System is known as Grants for Me. We are going to look at the application side, as all of you as business managers or LEA fiscal representatives need to sign off on the application. And I wouldn't want to know what I'm signing off on. I get it, it's a lot. So we're going to look at that. I will also show you how to access the grant award notice, which contains your monitoring risk level, which is very important. And it also has additional terms and conditions as well. We will look at the invoicing pages. We will talk about the substantial approval date, the service period, and the expenditure page in Grants for Me. Okay, so this is Grants for Me. And as you can see, this is from FY24. And I alluded to it earlier. There on the application, on your section page, you will see a section with your grant award notices. When you pull that up, I pulled up the Title I. This is all the information that appears. You'll see about, I don't know, 3/4 of the way down, it says subrecipient monitoring status. If you are in a medium or high status, you will receive a letter, a notification. There is currently 3 different submissions. There is a fall, winter, and spring. Some of you may have already been involved with the fall, which is heavily fiscal components. There's quite a few of them. I'm not doing good with all these notes here. Let's see. Okay, so this is also in the application side. And when you're signing off on the application, this is probably a page that you want to visit. It is called Create School and District Projects page. When you click on that, this is what you will see. The allocations per title are across the top. I have highlighted them in a red box. You want to make sure that that number matches the project total at the bottom, down here. I have blacked out the name of this school or this SAU for privacy reasons, but this is a dynamic SAU. It has non-publics, it has targeted assistant schools, and it has school-wide, which makes a difference. So this page talks to the invoicing page on the invoicing side, as well as the individual budgets. So if you were to click on one of the targeted schools, which would be here, and you're clicking on that, it's going to bring you to the budget page. In that budget, you will need to break out a budget for salaries, a budget for benefits, supplies, purchase services, travel, so on, by object code, okay? Then when you go to submit an invoice for those expenses,
you will see, and I really regret not making, I did make a slide and I'm sorry. I really regret not making the slide where it shows the box when you toggle over it on the invoicing side. But the difference is, in a targeted school, the budgeted items, it will show you what has been budgeted. Where in a school-wide, it says 0. So I've had people ask, there's nothing budgeted there. I can't put anything in there. Yes, you can. If you have a school-wide program, you can request for reimbursement. Okay? Here, this is how you access your invoicing in Grants for Maine. If there is a dollar amount over underneath the pending request amount, you will not be able to submit an invoice. That means that you have a pending request that has not been paid out yet. Okay? Here, when you select which title you want to submit an invoice for, this is the screen that it brings you to. Right there it shows you your substantially approvable date. Why is the substantially approvable date so important? Because you cannot ask for reimbursement for an expense that was obligated prior to that substantial approval date. Here we go. The date on the ESEA application when it's submitted in a substantially approvable form. For ESEA, substantially approvable form is the first 16 items on the checklist in the application. It may not always be the date that you approve it. So you're approving the application, it's coming into us, and we're reviewing it. Your substantial approval date might not always be that date if your application has to be returned for edits. Okay? Pre-award costs. Pre-award costs are costs that you anticipate incurring before the substantial approval date. But in order to receive pre-award costs, it must be in the application by title. You're requesting it by title. And it needs to be specific. I often look at the application, and if I see that you ask for pre-award costs because so-and-so is going to, I don't know, some professional development in August, I will approve that for Title II. But if you're asking for salaries and benefits for that, I'm not going to approve that. That's not what was approved in the application. Invoicing and reimbursement. It's pretty much aligned with all other federal programs, right? We need to think about the expenses that we're asking for reimbursement for, when did they occur. We need to take into consideration our period of performance, the obligation date. We want to make sure that the service period in Grants for Maine aligns with your expense. Okay, so I believe it was Colin asked earlier about journaling travel costs. On your trial balance, your general ledger, what have you, that journal date is the service date. Okay? So when it's journaled, because you're going to get reimbursement now, the travel has happened, you're going to get reimbursed now, that's your service period date. Service period cannot exceed 3 months, with the exceptions that we spoke of earlier, which right now for ESEA is your FY21, should you have any monies available. In FY22 for school improvement. FY23 for pilot innovative grant. Okay, I want to hit on this one other point. Expenses are in the category object code for which they apply. I see a lot of times that you're getting to the end of the grant and there hasn't been enough benefits budgeted. So you're going to invoice, ask for reimbursement for salaries and benefits for, a 3-month period of time, but you cannot put the benefits under the benefits object code because you don't have enough money there. So you just throw them into salaries. Coke and tires not going to catch it. I'm not perfect, and I might not catch it that one time, but I will eventually. So what that requires is for the application to be reopened and a budget adjustment to be done. It doesn't take that long. The team is usually on top of approving those. Once those budget revisions are approved, you can go ahead and submit your invoice properly. Okay, obligations. You saw this slide earlier, but I wanted to bring attention to these specific requirements. B, C, D, and F are generally what applies to ESEA. There are times that your expense may fall into more than one category. Okay? So, a big one for us is tuition reimbursement. Title II, tuition reimbursement. Sorry, I'm like sweating. Oh. Anyway, I see where staff members are asking for pre-approval for tuition reimbursement early, let's say early spring, right? They don't take the class until summer. And then the bookkeeper or business manager is asking for reimbursement in the fall, which is when they should, because tuition, like travel, is after the fact. The staff member has to complete the course successfully. We are going to talk more about tuition, but the point is when you're looking at that, the earliest date for that tuition is the date that the staff member asked. Okay? That's the earliest date for a binding written commitment. So please make sure that not only that date falls in your period of performance, but the class falls in the period of performance of the grant, right? And obviously, your request for reimbursement would as well. Here, this is just an informational slide. I will provide these slides to all LEA fiscal representatives through an email. And I believe they'll probably be posted as well on our ESEA webpage. But this is just for your information. Talks about the period of performance for all the grants that we could possibly have open right now. midterm monitoring. We need the details. And unfortunately, it's for a whole fiscal year. But that's what we need. We need the details. Travel reimbursement, one of my favorites. Obviously, it's a written reimbursement travel at the local level. If you do not have one, then it defaults to the government travel reimbursement policy, which can be found at gsa.gov, which I believe is that link right there, the travel cost link. Travel can be reimbursed after the fact. Again, you want to take into consideration your substantial approval date and your period of performance. The examples that I have up on the screen are not eligible for reimbursement because they are not an itemized receipt. Okay? Keep in mind that all travel reimbursement, as with all other reimbursements, must be reasonable and necessary. And that is a judgment call, I will say. I don't make those calls often on my own. I usually get other people's opinions. So for instance, if you've gone to lovely Orlando in March and you've gone out to eat and your local policy says, we're going to reimburse you for actual costs. Okay, so that means have at it. We're going to reimburse you for actual costs. I get the receipt, it's an itemized receipt, and it is very evident that there's more than one entree. The tip is for half of the bill. I want to be a waiter. Okay, so just keep these things in mind, and also keep in mind that you're following your own policies. Your own policies. I'm just making sure that that's what you're doing. And so, actual cost is probably the hardest job that you all have. It really is. I encourage districts to really look at adopting a per diem. Because if you do adopt a per diem, you don't need all the shoebox of receipts. But if most districts that I have seen this past year, they have a combination. So they have a combination of per diem and actual cost. What does that look like? That means I'm going to pay you up to $30 a day for your meals. That's low. But, I mean, I guess truck stops, I don't know. $30 a day for your meal with receipts. So what they're saying is, you need to give me your receipts, and if you come under that $30, that's what we're going to pay you. That's what we're going to reimburse you. If you go over, we're only paying you $30. Make sense? Tuition reimbursement. I really do gotta follow my notes. Let's see. Okay. Title II funds may be used for course reimbursement that is designed to increase teacher and principal quality and is tied to the district or school's areas of high needs. However, if an SAU has course reimbursement as a defined benefit in their teacher and or principal's contract, you must expense all your local funds that have been budgeted for that purpose before using federal funds. That makes sense? Okay. district is gonna reimburse me, but they expect me to give them 3 years beyond the scope. But I've had enough. I'm out. Leave it. So now they have a policy where they're gonna try to get the money from me, right? But they've already been reimbursed from the state through federal funds. The expectation from Maine DOE is you will return the full amount. However you get the funds from that staff member, that's on you at the local level. Equitable services. Equitable services are those services that are provided to the non-publics in your district. The public SAU must maintain fiscal control of all federal funds. You may never write a check to that non-public using federal funds. Payment can be made directly to a private school staff for professional development that they are attending outside of their contractual day. That can happen. You can also do that for tuition reimbursement as well. Wow. Here we go. All right, splitting invoices between grant years. I feel like I kind of have beat this to death through office hours, but I know many of you cannot attend office hours, and I definitely understand that. But if you are splitting expenses between 2 grant years, the following must be present. It must be applicable to both grant years. Okay, so it must appear in both grant year applications. Okay? Fall within the period of performance of both years. Now remember, ESDA federal funds are available for 27 months. So they overlap, right? FY22 overlaps FY23, so forth and so on. And with the tidings amendment waiver, well, that just stretched it even further. That's why right now, you could possibly have access to 21, 22, 23, and 24. Okay? The trial balances need to prove the split. So if you send me a trial balance and you just took the bottom dollar amount and said, okay, I'm paying this with FY22 and this with FY23, am I going to recon that? No. You need to make sure that it aligns. So I have one district that does use this method, and they will literally make a squiggle line up on salaries, and it will say FY22. And I will know that group of salaries is going towards FY22, the rest is FY23. Okay, so just notate it well enough so that I can tell the story to the feds when they do their improper Title I payment review. Okay. Okay, salaries and benefits. I know that it was FY22, I believe, is when in grants for me, they started making you break those up. They always did it in gems, but we're going back to that. So they need to be split proportionately. You cannot invoice FY22 for all salaries for the same time frame I'm talking about when you're splitting invoices, and then put all the benefits on FY23. Okay, so split them proportionately. Invoices should be for the exact same period. If you're going to split the expenses between 2 grant years, for the same time period, then that's what the service period needs to reflect in grant relief. Important dates to remember. This is what I alluded to earlier. August 1st is when the application is due. If you are interested in pre-award costs, the application must be submitted by August 1st. It's important that you meet with your ESEA coordinator so that you both understand the budget. August 30th is always, I should say September 30th. Yeah, I should say September 30th, sorry. September 30th is the last day to expense funds on grants that are ending with a liquidation period through December. And November 1st is the performance report for ESEA is due. It's important that the performance report is received timely because this will hold up your invoices for that same grant year. So right now we are in FY23 performance report. If you have not submitted that, but you still have funds available and you want to pay your October expenses with that grant, it won't happen. The performance report must be submitted and approved before you can get additional money for that grant year. And that the performance report is reporting expenses through 9/30. Okay, so we're just gonna wrap some things up with some hot topics. Period of performance for a grant, substantial approval, they kind of go hand in hand, but they don't necessarily. Okay, because the period of performance for a grant in grants for me is going to show the program, I think it's labeled program begin date is 7/1. That's when the funds are available to the state. Okay, so the period of performance for ESEA is always from the substantial approval date to the end date of that. Reimbursement for expenses. Summer accruals cannot be reimbursed with current year funds. So if you had salaries that was earned last school year, you cannot use 24 to pay for those summer accruals, those salaries. And please don't ask for summer accruals on 2 separate invoices. It just fiscally doesn't make sense, but I haven't seen it yet and I don't really want to. Travel, written travel reimbursement policy. If you don't have one, or if you have a really outdated one, I got one the other day that was adopted in 2005. I have seen policies that do not have all of the components that are in 2 CFR 200.475. It just is addressing mileage. It's quite common. So if your district doesn't have one, you don't have one. If you use the government per diem rate because you don't have one, that's all you have to tell us on the monitoring, is that we use the government per diem rate, you know. And how do I test that? I ask for a travel reimbursement request, because I can tell. Equitable services. The main point with equitable services is please, please, please do not pay your non-public directly. Obviously, obviously we know gift cards are out of the question, and food is at a very high burden. Any questions? I know. I'm ready to go too. I see the faces. I'm like, yeah. I'm ready to go too. But my friends from IDEA are up next.
So good. I mean, I've had it.
I got Title I.
I've had it other jobs, just not this one. I have other grants, federal grants.
We go from hot now to cold.
As I say,
I was actually trying to keep awake at the time.
I have Perkins money.
IDEA is so much easier than but I think there's more than kind of incentive to do scope project. It's much more consistent for all guys that are our money. The single player stuff, all these other rules. For our local economy, we took all of our PD, all of our and then what's left is to decide on health. And we try to do a technique. Try to do what? A technique. Yeah. But there's nothing else for us to put in there. I mean, at that point, I don't have only that we don't buy that much stuff. You get $500,000 and benefits less. But, yeah. And it is a shame. Given the we need to come and they so hard to get a new position into the local budget. Grant money. And then we have to justify the position.
Hello, everybody.
Thank you.
Are we ready to talk everything IDEA?
Yes.
Is your name on this list?
No. It's too much to
So, we're going to get started talking about IDEA. Colleen O'Neill, which you probably all know.
Yeah.
My fiscal coordinator, assistant coordinator, amazing person, is here to help me with technical assistance and other things as needed. I tend to need it. What you're looking at here, well, let me back up. IDA is under federal audit in the coming year, and we have, we're in the process of doing our policies and procedures. And what we wanted to talk, we don't have a PowerPoint, we just want to talk about the hot topics of the federal audit so that you're all aware of it. And new guidance that came out recently, July, August, where IDA used to do risk-based monitoring. So it was all based off your risk assessment. If you happen to land in a high-risk category, then you would get fiscally monitored.
What's this list?
To give you some idea of the scope of that, this year we had 2 high-risk districts, and one of them's there because they're new. And the year before that, we had 1. The feds have now said that we need to move from just a risk-based monitoring system to risk plus copart. So what you see up here right now is the monitoring list, the fiscal monitoring list for this coming year.
I just wanted to give everybody a heads up, if you're on that list, you will be hearing from Katie Erskine, asking you to provide some information and kind of talk about what fiscal monitoring looks like from IDA's perspective and what you can expect. IDA's fiscal monitoring system begins with an annual risk assessment that we do in the office. And that risk assessment looks at all kinds of factors for each and every district. We look at the size of your ward, we look at your accounting system, we look at complexities of your accounting system, ability to track time and effort. We look at external factors. We look at whether or not maybe you have a new accounting system, because that poses risk for that year's financials. We look at if you've had key turnover in personnel, which would be 3 key positions: your superintendent, your special ed director, and your business manager. Yes, you made the top 3. So if you've had a turnover, you are assessed points. If you're a recipient of over $250,000 in IDA funds, you are required to bill monthly. And that is not a federal requirement. We do that because of audit. The larger districts get complicated if there's a problem with a trial balance, if you're looking at more than 1 month at a time.
We did that
So
last year.
we require monthly invoicing. And that's why we're able to extend the FY22 so that you can submit more than 1 month in order to draw all those funds down, is because it's not a federal requirement, it's a state requirement. We look at, if you've done that, if you follow that rule, we look at whether or not your year-end report was on budget. We look at timely submission of reports, whether your application was submitted timely, whether your year-end reports were submitted timely, whether or not you made maintenance of effort and excess cost. All of these things, whether or not you are, you have been found disproportionate. If you have mandatory CCEIS requirements, then you also receive points on your risk assessment. Tyra mentioned earlier that you can go to your GAM and you can see the level of risk. It's either low, moderate, or high. If you're a high risk district, you do receive fiscal monitoring, which includes desk audit plus site visit. So it's intense. I will say that the site visit is primarily comprised of, well, we get a hold of you and we say, how do you want to spend our time together? There are certain fiscal components that we have to look at. If you buy it, we have to do an inventory check, we have to look at invoices. We have to witness your internal controls as they're happening. But the bulk of the day, and we'll spend all day there if you want us to, is going over certain topics in IDEA. So if you have new personnel and you want to talk about MOE, excess costs, I've sat down with many superintendents because every year that they go to alter a spend budget, if they try to cut your spend budget, they have to understand, because of maintenance of effort, they lose $2 for every one they cut, potentially. So we're able to kind of convey that to them. We sit with business managers and sped directors who have communication issues in districts here and there. So it's really up to you. Before we come, we'll be getting a hold of you and saying, what would you like us to do? Who would you like us to meet with? What can we bring to you to offer that one-on-one technical assistance? So it's not as bad as it sounds to have us come. We are hiring a new person on the team. We're trying to get that done now. Rocket science and hiring people at the state level, but not even. So we're almost there. And this person will be helping us do the audits throughout the year. So that's the risk assessment part. If you're on this list, you will receive a letter from us, and in that letter, it will ask you to supply us with different information. It will ask you for a trial balance for Fund 2470, which is your 611 local entitlement fund, for a certain period of year. So for a certain period of time, it could be for FY22, it could be for FY23. We're monitoring for both years at this point. So we want a detailed trial balance in Excel format. We want copies of your policies and procedures, and we give you the list of required policies and procedures. So we do a deep dive and a review of those. We ask for contracts. If you've got contracted work happening, we ask for time and effort. What else do we ask for? There's a list. There's a whole list that goes into this letter. Sampling of invoices. So you have quite a bit of time, 30 days to return, or 60 days to return all that information to us. We go through the process of a desk audit. We'll take your trial balance and we'll reconcile it to what was invoiced and reconcile that to what you uploaded to VEMS to make sure that everything triangulates and reconciles. If it doesn't, you'll hear from us and we'll work with you on what we found. Hopefully we can isolate the problem for you so that you can know what you have to do to take care of the problem. Oftentimes we recommend changes to policies and procedures, and I will tell you, we generally align that to the Bruman documentation that I mentioned earlier. So I will send that to Joanne and she can farm it out to everybody. It is a great document to use to make sure that you've covered your language in all of the key areas. I think it was Tyra that mentioned at the department, we're looking at trying to find a common place for those policies and procedures to be, because they are required across all of our federal teams, so you won't be asked multiple times to supply them to us. So once we do the desk audit, then we'll schedule the on-site visit. Any corrective action plan that's issued, you have 60 or 90 days to resolve, and then we have 60 days to get back to you. And we generally like to sit with you when we come on site and kind of talk about what needs to be done there so that the CAP isn't that time intensive for you. We're working on, to shift gears on you, we're working on the year-end report right now. IDA was the last team to get anything done in grants for me, so it's still should say under construction, because we're still working to try to get it so it functions well. But Colleen is working with everyone right now to get those year-end reports submitted. And I mentioned those were extended to December 30, so we need to get those in.
I would just comment on the year-end report. So this year seems to be going much more smoothly than last year. Last year we were straddling two systems, and we were reporting on the first year expenses of the grant. And we also had to take into consideration any carryover that you had, and that was in the old GEM system. This year, the reporting is the same. We're reporting the first year of the grant, so we're reporting July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, less any carryover from FY22. So in an ideal world, what should happen is if your billing is done through June 30th of 2023, those amounts that you've put in that expenditure grid on the invoicing side should be the same amounts that are in your year-end report. And the trial balance should support those numbers. And it's up to us to take a look at those trial balances and back out any of that FY22 carryover you may have. So, I mean, it really should be that easy. We should be able to transfer the numbers from your June 30th invoice into your year-end report and have that backup documentation of the trial balance to support that. And if that's not happening or not, working out for you, please give me a call. I'm happy to help you with that. So, like I said, we would talk about the hot button topic for the feds. If
your meaningful consultation documentation. A lot of districts have private schools that do not want to consult, and no matter how many times you reach out to them, they just don't respond. You're required to show 3 attempts at a minimum of trying to engage in meaningful consultation, and I always recommend that that not be strictly email. So you want to document phone calls, you want to document email attempts, and anything else that you may have. You may track them down at a basketball game. I mean, you just want to document every attempt that you make to engage in meaningful consultation. Because what they're doing, we're in cohort 2 of the federal cohort, and there are SEAs that have findings for districts because they didn't document their attempts. So they're saying you didn't make a real effort to consult. And so we end up having to go into corrective action. If you do consult with them and you have your per student allocation, that allocation cannot be used to determine eligibility, but it can be used for reevaluations, and it can never go straight to the district. Similar to what Tyra said in ESEA, you can never cut a check to the private school. So you're basically looking at related services that you can provide. You can send somebody over from the district, or you could pay a provider to go in, but you can never give the money to the district to provide the PT. We have districts who never do engage in consultation, and in that case, you're required to hold that per student amount of money for 24 months. And once 24 months has passed and they've shown no willingness to consult and receive the IDA services, then you can move that money into one of your available open projects in the last 3 months of the grant's life, but not before. So that's something that we will be looking at really closely. They're looking at expenditures for these children. As you know, you can have 5 early play students, doesn't mean you have to split it equally among 5. You can determine how and who it's spent on. I will say that even though you can't spend the early placed funds for determination, eligibility determination, evaluation, you are still held responsible for child find. So that's often misunderstood, because it is a requirement of you, but you can't use those federal funds for that purpose. And so that is the hot topic of the moment with the vets coming in. And they seem to be very, very heavily focused on policies and procedures, where before we were at a paperwork reduction, support's more, the most important thing. Now we are really kind of swinging back towards documentation and accountability. So we're going back more heavily towards regulation than we had been before. As you know, administration to administration, these things swing. So that's just where we are, and we happen to be up for audit. They will be selecting, and I've already had a couple of districts, one of which is in this room and may remember or may not. The feds have reached out to do invoice review for certain periods of time. So they are starting to poke around, and school district will be selected for audit. It's one of the reasons why Colleen and I do such an intensive year-end review on your financials, because we don't want anything slipping by us that could come back to cost you later on. So we do our very best to make sure that we back you up and support you any way we can. There's all kinds of topics, and what I would love to do, switching gears again, is we're going to be opening these office hours. And the format for that has been described to me as a presentation plus open forum. So we'll have a team come in and do a subject matter presentation at these. I would love to know what you would love to know. And from what team. And way we can organize and put out some sort of a scheduled calendar for you all to show you this is the topic of the day, and then we'll have open Q&A, because I am on your listserv, thanks to Joanne Allen back there. She put me on years ago. And, you know, you ask questions of each other, and then it kind of creates questions, and you sort of feed off each other when you all get into one room. So I think that open forum is very important, not just for us to be able to share information with you, but for you all to be able to share information with each other. So now, do we have?
I'm ready to write those things down.
Well, they're going to tell me right now. Barb, what do you want from Barb and Colleen to take away today? We're happy to share that policy and procedure template. Everybody is fully aware and educated on maintenance of effort, right? You all have done like your 6-month check-in to see how you're doing there, so you don't get at the end of the year and find out, oh dear, the last bit of relief funds didn't do very good with maintenance of effort. And access costs. I mean, let's have it. Come on. Any questions? Any topic?
Any topic?
Any topic. Burning to know. I've been on the hot seat a long time, so I'm prepared. CDS. Anything there? I hear laughter. Where are the questions? Well, I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to have oversight, so this is your moment. If you want to comments, how do you all feel about SAUs taking on 3 and 4-year-olds? I see closed eyes and moans. Laughter to other, but I mean, what is the concern? Money, space, there we go. Space, money and space. Has your district looked at what a transition would look like? You're poking it. So we have districts that are like dipping their toe in the pond right now. And boy, this is a tough topic because it's come up in legislation like, it was before me, it's been there before me. And it seems to be getting more, and it's getting closer and closer, and then at the last hour they'll say, okay, and then we're tasked with doing all of this work for work sessions, and how is this gonna happen? So, I am in a position now where it's like, you know, we are putting money towards moving these kiddos into SAUs. Maybe now is a good time to look at that transition because there's that transition money from CDS, whereas once legislation passes, if it ever does, it's going to be, this is when you have to do this. So, and who knows what that fiscal landscape will look like. So, yeah. Anybody have kids that have transitioned and now you're having trouble getting your bills paid? Awesome. I know there's some of you out there. We've had trouble getting people into sync so you can put the service logs in. It's one of the things that we're working to overcome, so it has delays on payments. But I'm glad that it's none of you. Anything else?
Has there been discussion anywhere at the state level about out-of-district placement and increased funding for that? My district's struggling with number and transporting them, and how that funding is either going to be supported at the state level or going to have to be locally. Or anything like that at all?
So I'm working on 2 levels of this at this point. Are you talking K-12 or are you talking K-12? So as you noticed, there was an emergency rule that came out that said we're going to move funding for out-of-district placements at special purpose private schools in particular to the number of student or instructional days per year, rather than days of attendance. Now, if you budgeted for the cost of what that placement is for the year, and you didn't cut corners by saying, oh, that kid's not gonna show up 25% of the time, so we're gonna cut 25% off that cost. If you budgeted for the whole amount, you will not see an increase. So I am working right now on the different methodology of how that's being done. We've had a lot of concern over the fact that some of these special purpose private schools are year-round programs. And we have school districts that don't want to pay for year-round programs, as some kids and parents don't want their kid in the program for 52 weeks. So what I have done is I've taken all of the projected ESY days and numbers of students, and then a regular calendar year. And so it's prorated. So you won't have to pay to have your child in a summer program if your child's not attending. But what has essentially happened is we now have a higher denominator because there's more days. So we have the same total expenses, and we're dividing that by a higher number, so your rate goes down. But you pay that rate more days than you did before. But at the end of the day, it all comes to the same place. So I wouldn't be too concerned with that if you budgeted 100% for that cost. Now, I know, and nobody's going to raise their hand and admit it, but there are a lot of districts that did say, historically, this has cost us about 75% of that total cost, and that is where they set their budget. Now, they could be in some, that situation could be problematic. To me, that's a problematic approach anyway, because you have no idea how many days your child's going to miss. So you're subjecting yourself to a budget shortage anyway. But great question. We are looking at paying special purpose pre-K rates right at the moment. That's where the state is, kind of exploring that. Anything else?
Last year, you chose us for an audit, and I sent you all the information, but you haven't come on site. When should we plan for that?
You're one of those. So we do have this list of about 10 to 12 people that we've been kind of gathering. That was FY22, and we still have all of your information, and we're still going to go through the audit, but we did not have a person to do that. I mentioned that we are onboarding somebody right now to kind of allow us to do that. So we should send them a letter, just letting everybody know that we're just really behind. Yeah. That's we put that on like the last thing on the priority list is monitoring people. So we like to get you paid and stuff first. So,
yes.
You know, the audit can wait until the feds come, and then I'm sure they'll disagree with me. Anybody else? We counted.
It's okay.
Yeah. We're going to Aroostook County in January. We said all year long to this point, we need to get to Aroostook County before the weather turns. And guess what? We end up scheduled in January.
July is probably your only
I said in September. Wow.
September would have been excellent. September, October is an excellent time to come.
Yeah.
January, bring your boots.
I just am worried, but they do have dog sledding up there now, right, Mark?
Yeah.
You'll get me home.
We can definitely meet you around.
Yeah. Mark must have like some winter vehicle, like get DOE back home. Nobody wants us to stay forever, I don't understand. Maybe Colleen, she's really sweet, she cooks, so, but me. Anything else? Do you think? Sorry we didn't even have a PowerPoint for you, but really technically on vacation today, so. There's only so much I can do. All right, well, I think early, but thank you so much for inviting us in, Joanne. And she seriously missed it, DOE, that's all I say.
I can imagine.
Thank you everyone for coming, and especially thank you to our partners at DOE. I really appreciate your help and assistance. If anyone thinks of anything on the drive home, you're welcome to email me and I can route it to the team. If it's a question for me, don't send it. You all have a great holiday. Thanks for coming, and looking forward to seeing you in Rockland in March, and we'll